of them as well. What a move from the 48. Oh, look at this, and onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from the number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
Round 2 of the 2025 Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge takes us from the East Midlands last week to East Anglia this week as we've rolled up the A11 to Snetterton, another difficult circuit to negotiate, particularly with the multi-class field that we're going to have this evening. It's going to be an interesting race as well, particularly with championship ramifications very much on the line with only a handful of rounds this season. Darren Thacker up here in the commentary box alongside Cameron Roger. We've got Hugo Luis behind the cameras as well, making the broadcast look absolutely wonderful for us this evening. Cam, pleasure to be alongside you for another exciting instalment of this GT Challenge, but the short season means that every single race holds such great importance around this season.
Oh, it certainly does. Just 5 rounds of action and, of course, 1 race. Sometimes in championships similar to this, you have maybe a sprint and a feature race, but no, just 1 feature race today, and therefore you have 5 opportunities. So if you started the season a little bit, wonky back at Donington Park, you really need to get your season going now, as we are basically back-to-back as well. Just a week's break between now and Spa, and then it's 3 weeks in a row to finish the calendar.
Yeah, we need 2 weeks to get to Belgium, but we only need the 1 week to get back to Silverstone. Everyone's rushing to the home of UK motorsport before we get to Brands Hatch. It's going to be a really interesting way to round out the season. Of course, prizes for the drivers who win the championships. You can see that the top 3 drivers in all 3 classes, in all 4 classes, I should say, will get a couple of general admission tickets to a British GT round of their choice. I know that I choose Snetterton. It's a short drive for me. Winning driver from each class also gets that Simagic GT Neo wheel rim and a base performance simulator GT Sim 1 hour simulator session, and there's always a prize for drivers who turn up. They could win a Simagic Alpha mini wheelbase, so loads of prizes for drivers to contend with over the course of this season. Of course, so many of the drivers here coming together will be involved in a lot of the recommended communities from Motorsports UK Esports, and it is a really good way, isn't it, Cam, of bringing together a lot of drivers who may not race well, race very much together, but can race really well and in some different machinery.
Yeah, of course, you would recognise loads of these names throughout the various competitions that we do at MS UK Esports, so it's really, really good to see, and yeah, it's good community of drivers really bringing everyone together. So yeah, can't wait to see how this season goes. To be honest, of course, just 1 round down and still plenty of racing to go. The different categories that we have as well, with the Pro and the AMs, and then of course the G Series and GT4s, just a lot of action, and here's how they rack up after round 1.
It's Adam Watson who won the opening race in the GT3 Pros. He was just ahead of Ben Cooper, who managed to finish just behind him on the podium. Andrew Pike was the driver in 3rd. Rachel Conkley and Aidan Carter 4th and 5th. Conkley had that interesting strategy. Didn't work out in the end for her. She still comes into the championship 4th. Matt Cheverton, Pedro Silva, James King and Mike Barber, the top 9 drivers. Garth Higgins didn't score any points last week. Of course, all of these standings are going to be just the race results from last week, pretty much. In the GT3M standings, it was Nathan Anstis who took the victory ahead of Ricky Pittman, who was really run close in a fantastic battle towards the end with Oliver Ettridge. They managed to pick up the top 3 after a little bit of misfortune for Gianluca Elliott. He's down his 7th in the championship behind Sikorsky, Ben Benioff and Jake Pitt. John Earl, Nick SD and Louis Hesketh round out the top 10 in these standings. Over in the GT4, slightly smaller field last week. There was only a handful of drivers. Kieran Sharp was the driver to come out on top. However, Daniel Thomas finished in 2nd and Christian Menes was 3rd, a driver who is very competent in the GT4. I'm thinking he's going to be going for a win this evening. Brandon Loden and Richard Simler, the other 2 drivers to compete last week. Patrick Rich, Ryan Moles and Jack Jeffries yet to get off the mark. And over in the GT4M standings, it was a little bit busier than the pros. Joshua Bigembe won the race by quite a hefty margin last week. He didn't really have to look behind him towards Joe Coffin, who finished in P2. Ethan Morone came 3rd ahead of Mazzy Wild and Georgie Mackay. Amy Grimm, David Brown, Ashley Toft, Luca Munro and Dylan Mystery, the top 10 drivers coming into this 2nd race of the season. So many of those guys, Cam, particularly towards the bottom end of those championships, know that they really have to perform tonight because if you're finding yourself, 20, 30 points back, and you've only got 3 races to gain them back, it's a mountain to climb, realistically.
Oh, it sure is, and especially for the AM category drivers, it's quite an interesting one with how it works. Of course, they're on the track with the pro guys as well. So if they can have a good race here or there, they might be able to get a few pro drivers in between them on the track, have the track position over their AM category drivers. And actually, we're seeing a similar situation with Elian Sikorsky up there as well. So definitely interesting one with how it works out with them being on the track at the same time, because the only difference between the AM and the pro guys is whether you are above or below 3K iRating. But we all know that doesn't necessarily mean your speed. If you're someone who doesn't race that much on iRacing, then maybe you are under 3K, but then you're actually quite a fast driver. So maybe you're in the AM category, but you're still quite fast. So it's interesting how that one distributes itself. But we're coming into qualifying session, 4.5 minutes remaining so far, as we see Watson and Elliott leading the pro and AM categories.
And Snetterton, a circuit that I think a lot of importance is held on the qualifying session. There are overtaking spots on the racetrack, but it can be difficult to make some of them work. The run down to turn 1 is a good spot to try and make a move, but again, 90-degree right-hander, it's not as slow as you'd necessarily imagine it to be. So there's definitely a real risk of starting further back in the order or not being able to get your way back through the field. Christian Mennies knows that only all too well in the number 8 car as he runs his way through the final couple of corners. Such a long way to turn right, all the way from Nelson through Coram in towards the final corner at Murray's. Good spot to watch the racing here, actually. Into towards the final corner. Flick the car left if you can. Try not to run it out too far wide and get the drive to the line. Really interesting to see what some of the pros and the AMs can do in relation to each other. Of course, there will be that separation between the GT3s and the GT4s, but it's regular that we often see a mix in terms of pros and AMs in each category, or in each car, you could say, Cam.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see them being distributed by the colours, just the slight lighter blue colour there for the AM drivers, the darker blue. So it's Watson leading, and on the front row, he's going to have an AM driver, Elliott, alongside him. That is, unless anyone can change things, you've got 0.3 of a second gap for those two at the front. So they've definitely got the field covered by the rest of them. It is Daniel Thomas leading your GT4 Pro category, and Joshua Bagembe, your race winner from last time with the GT4 AMs. He is currently leading so far, a bit further down, but of course, the grid will be in the overall order.
It will, and it will really mean that there's quite a big mix of the cars. I think with the top 2 in the GT3s at the moment being in different classes, and first and third being in different classes in the GT4s, it really is going to create an interesting tussle between some of the classes, particularly as we get off of the line to get into this race. It's a somewhat extended race, though. There's more than enough time to make some moves, and it's obviously not going to be one on the opening lap. We saw some contact last week at Donington Park on the opening corner. Took a few drivers out of contention, and it really can spiral from there, can't it? A little bit of a poor qualifying, a little bit further back than you want, and all of a sudden you're involved in an incident, and it just can, follow incident after incident from there and really damage your race chances.
Yeah, absolutely. The qualifying in a 1.5 hour race is not necessarily important, as you say, but if it means a bad qualifying means that you get caught up in something on the first couple of laps, then of course that is where you get the negative side of it. As Kieran Sharp comes down pit road. Of course, most of the drivers will have finished their 3-lap allocation by this point, with 2 minutes remaining on the session. It is a solo session as such. 10 minutes they've got. So they had obviously a couple of laps already when we were doing the intro, and now they're just setting their final opportunities to get a bit further on the grid. Here's James King. He's getting about just over a second really to start challenging up towards the front. He's also going to back out of that lap, so I think the grid is pretty much set.
Yeah, can't see too many more drivers out on the circuit trying to complete their lap. There are a few circulating at the moment, but not too sure how many of them are actually improving on their lap times at the moment. It doesn't really appear that there are many, particularly in the GT3s at the moment. Matt Cheverton, John Earl, Zed Murray and Chris Humphrey still out on the track. We're looking at John Earl now as he gets his way towards the difficult section of the racetrack down at Brundle and Nelson. But very much a part of the circuit where moves can be made, but you have to be committed, because we've seen it time and time again into Brundle here at Snetterton. Drivers that just about go for the move can often cause quite a bit of contact, and at the high speeds that you're going into that corner, it doesn't really end very well.
Yeah, this is actually quite a tricky track, to be honest. There's a lot of actually medium to higher speed corners, some that you may not see at other parts of the calendar as such, and some other British tracks being a bit tight and twisty as John Earl jumps up a couple of places to 15th overall in your GT3 category. But here there's a lot of these fast, long corners as well. I guess it's really the length of the corner actually here that's the real issue. So you have to get the car sorted and planted and not really wiggle about. It's certainly a tricky and tough track for the guys to go around. As we've got Scott Dickinson coming to the line, one of the final drivers to set a lap, just seconds to go in the session. Not set a time so far. Where is he going to jump himself up to? 9th place in class. That's not too bad from him.
No, really important to get himself in that, in contention really, and ahead of the GT4s, because that's going to be really difficult for any drivers in the GT3s who haven't been able to make their way through. Here's the starting grid though, and we're going to see the mix of the pros and the AMs, but this is how they will line up in just a couple of minutes' time. Adam Watson leading the GT3 Pro class is just ahead of Gianluca Elia, who's leading the GT3 AM class, and you've got 2 more pros in Ben Cooper and Rachel Conkley on row number 2 with Mike Barber and Franciszek Sikorski making up row number 3. Oliver Etheridge and Matt Cheverton, after Etheridge's good result last time out at Donington, starts from 7th, Cheverton from 8th. Pike and Carter make up row number 5 with James King and Pedro Silva inside the top 12. We'll roll on to see more GT3s in the form of Ben Bennyworth and Nathan Anstis on row number 7. John Earl and Ricky Pittman make up row 8, with 17th and 18th taken up by Louis Hesketh and Nick Scott Dickerson, as they are a couple of seconds off the pole time. Zed Murray and Andy Chell, along with Chris Humphreys, are the last GT3s towards the front of the field before we get ourselves into the GT4s. And it is going to be Daniel Thomas who leads that field to green. Kieran Sharp just in behind, and Joshua Bagembe, of course, winner last time out at Donington Park, will lead the GT4 field to green in just a moment's time. Joe Coffin chased him down for that AM win last time out. Couldn't do it then. Can he do it today? We'll see. He starts right behind him in 25th. Ryan Moles, Jack Jeffries and Richard Similar inside the top 28, with the 15th row contesting Christian Menes and Brandon Loden. They are the 30 drivers towards the front of the field. Still more to come though. David Brown and Matty Wild, Luca Monroe and Ben Holmes on row 16 and row 17, with Carl Chase and Ethan Marone on row 18 in 35th and 36th. And the final 5 cars on the grid: Georgie Mackay, Amy Grimm, James Smaggersgale, Craig Hewlett and Dylan Mystery, the 41 cars that will take to the green flag here this evening. I think we're going to have a decent enough formation lap to get ourselves ready, and it's a gorgeous day. You don't get that around here very often, Cam. Not so much comment here in the British countryside, but yeah, what's that? 19 degrees out there, 25 on the track as well. So pretty decent conditions actually out there. Nice bright blue skies as well. So that is solid for the simulating the 15th of May in the sim time. Actually 9:30 in the morning, a nice bright and early one for these drivers. That means it will be heating up as the race goes on, and the 1.5 hours commences. And I will say, actually, as we're on the formation lap now, if you're a fan of Snetterton and it is a hot day and it's a very sunny day, there is no shade anywhere. So it's a good job there aren't really people out here to be sunburnt, because there would be a fair few, sticky tops, I think, by the end of the day if we were in real life. But we're coming in towards the back end of the circuit already. Good that we only have the half of a formation lap to get ready, but the opening couple of laps they can, they're going to be critical because drivers have to get off the line well, but there's so much danger around.
Exactly. Look how narrow it is, even on the formation lap. Even you can just imagine going side by side through here. So difficult. Really old school circuit. As you mentioned, no shade because it is an old airfield that's been chopped and changed a few times. But we now have this Snetterton 300, and the drivers are now getting themselves through the final corner to open up the second round of the season.
Yeah, Adam Watson and Gianluca Elia, the top 2 in the race, are currently leading in this race, at least their respective classes. Neither one, I think, is particularly confident about the opening lap, but Adam Watson has the championship lead in his back pocket. Out of the final corner they come. Pace car will come into the pit lane as we get ready to race here at Snetterton. It's going to be a long old race, but the opening couple of laps are going to be really critical as we get going. Great start, it seems, from Adam Watson across the line. Gianluca Elia looks like he's following him towards turn number 1 as they single file out right at the sharp end of the field. Battle for 4th and 5th just in behind though. Inside line going to settle that one as the GT4s get themselves underway. Immediately single file out pretty much throughout the entire field. A couple of moves in the offing into the opening corner, but a very calm start from both fields.
Yes, no crazy crashes or spins like we saw even just before the green flag. Last time I say that, one of the cars on the back end of the GT3 field going in towards turn 2 to Montreal hairpin was off the track with 3 wide down there as well in the GT4 category. They made it work as well. Double overtake from Mercedes up the inside.
Yeah, really tricky to make a move through there, especially when you're diving in on 2 cars. But I think a couple of guys just about making it work as they run their way through the tricky left-hander at Palmer. Generally a corner the drivers used to set up Agostini down here. This tricky left-hander, a bit of a send spot for many drivers on the circuit tonight. I think everybody's just about going to make their way through this opening half a lap, at least without too much of a hitch. They'll single file out as they make their way into Hamilton, which is likely where we're going to see a couple of moves towards the latter stages of the race, particularly when it comes to lapping cars. But for the time being, in the early stages, the race leaders have got away well. Watson, Elliott, Thomas and Agembe all holding the lead for the time being.
As is the Brandon Loudon in the grey Mercedes, I should say. He was the one making that double move on the 2 cars behind Sinmore and Menzies, and they were actually for position in class as well. So it's up to 5th place there. Sinmore in the middle of this trio, coming down in towards Brundle. It's a very tricky braking zone for a fast left-hander kick. Sinmore looks to the inside, can't quite make it stick. Loudon's already got inverted nose on the front end after some contact already on this first lap, but he manages to keep that position to get towards the bomb hole. Unfortunately, in the background, not enough for Menzies to look past.
Yeah, Menzies, a driver who, I said he'd probably be looking for the win at the top of the show. He's down in P7 and last in class for the time being. Wouldn't mind getting through on a couple of his rivals on the opening couple of laps, but in towards the final corner at Murray's, it was difficult to really find a move if you're not already alongside, which is what we saw just in the background there. And it could be Carl Chase and Matthew Wilde fighting it outside the side. In fact, I believe it is, as they run down towards the opening corner. Move on, though, up here in towards turn number 1. Christy Menzies is right behind this battle between Giant and Loden and Richard Simner. Simner's going to be able to get his way through on the inside line, but there's contact off the road. Don't bounce too far onto the track. Or lucky that the 42 has not come on the track more. But that's not the right line. And that's a big old crash as they both go into the wall.
Yeah, his car was broken already. Sinmore, the front right tyre there, that was damaged from the initial contact, and unfortunately just was not able to steer, I guess, as he came back onto the track. Huge contact is made further down as well. That's such a big shame. Looks like maybe Ben Holmes was the other driver involved in that one. Big contact, losing 2 drivers in one corner. Sinmore made a good move up the inside there at turn 1. Unfortunately, just got a little bit of contact in the background from Loudon, trying to get back on the power, maybe do a bit of an up and under. We see the right-handed tyre. He's trying to steer there, but the car just still pointing to the left. There's obviously some steering damage.
Yeah, acrobatics not really something you want in motorsport, and I think Ben Holmes is going to feel slightly aggrieved, but Richard Simner, of course, that car heavily damaged from the first hit into the wall, just wasn't able to control it enough to avoid the contact as they made their way towards the second turn of the lap. Whilst there has been quite a lot going on in those GT4 classes, it's really settled at the front in the GT3s. Adam Watson with a 2.8 second lead, Gianluca Orelli with a 3.3 second lead. Those guys seem like they're pretty confident and comfortable for the time being.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at this lead that Watson is doing. Of course, he's got an AM car in between him and his next rival of Ben Cooper. So there's about a 3-second gap that's opening up there. We have had a lead change in your GT4 AM category. Begembe has lost out positions. We have always some GT3s have gone around. Humphreys and Chell, they are going down through the GT4 field. There's also been some issues for them at the end of this lap, and they're going to have to just sort it out. And then, that's through the bomb hole. Already side by side there. Through the bomb hole, contact was made, and unfortunately, there goes Chell just dropping down the way. There's no further damage on that car. We're going to see this already, a big run coming out of Nelson, but that's just way too far back to try and make a move stick.
Yeah, and in the end, off the road and giving Norfolk County Council one less job on the lawn-mowing front. Beneath Decorum, it's difficult to really get back onto the circuit, isn't it? Such a long right-hander because the amount of rotation, and cars stick to the inside line as well. You don't really want to veer too much onto the circuit, but difficult to get your way back on, which is why I think we saw them drop at so many spots. Carl Chase and Luca Monroe fighting it through, going towards Agostini now as they came through Palmer. I said Agostini's a part of the circuit where we could see a lot of sense. It's the heaviest braking zone on the lap, and with the shortish straight coming up to it, it's definitely going to be an appealing spot for drivers throughout this race.
Yeah, it's a nice one as well because it's really wide. Obviously, this is the slightly newer part of the track, but they made it a lot more wide there. And also, the corner before at Palma is really difficult. So often drivers make a mistake. The driver ahead has a wiggle, and then the one behind gets the run and has a good opportunity down there. But as ever around Snetterton, if you're going to make it, you really have to send it. And unfortunately, a few drivers so far not quite making that stick. A few incidents already in the opening couple of laps. But up towards the front of this GT3 field, as you're mentioning earlier, a lot more comes. This is Ben Cooper, third on the road, second in class. He's got Elia, your AM leader, just ahead. And then we've got this quadruple pack. We've got Cooper, Concoli, Barber, and Cheverton, the 4 pros chasing them down.
Yeah, it's a really interesting front pack, isn't it, in the GT3s, with the mix between the classes, but at the same time, almost the little blocks that we are seeing. The 4 pros of Cooper, Concoli, Barber, and Cheverton, with Elia in front, Sikorsky and Ettridge behind. It really does show that there isn't quite a full mix, but there really is going to be a blend between the two. It's just a question of how much those groups are going to mix throughout this race. I think that's going to be really interesting to watch. No one really going for the moves early on in this race. I think after last week, I think a lot of the drivers are going to be content, aren't they, to sit and wait for a little bit longer. Races were lost really early on 7 days ago, and I think for a lot of the drivers who didn't necessarily pick up the points that they wanted, they know there's not many more opportunities left in the season with only 4 more rounds to go, and they don't really want to throw it away early again.
Of course, but there is strategy that comes in the way of this race as well. It is an hour and a half in total, so sometimes you don't have to absolutely go for it in the opening parts of the race. Just consolidate your position, but then again, you don't want to lose time. So one issue, for instance, the cars we're focusing on at the front of the GT field here, is that Ben Cooper is already 4.5 seconds off Adam Watson, and not only that, but he's got an extra car in between them that he's not really fighting for. So there's some track position being lost there, and I wonder, maybe it's just because there's a little bit of a train here actually behind Elia, so I just wonder if Elia was not there, if they'd be able to go a couple of tenths quicker.
Yeah, it was the bottleneck at the moment, but he's leading his class, and I think he's going to be delighted to have 4 pros behind him. That's a really good buffer to split him with the rest of the pack, and we saw how good Sikorsky was last week in terms of the overall pace. A couple of mistakes dropped him down the order, prevented him from getting anything towards a podium, but the chances are going to be there for him throughout this race, and particularly with him being in P2 now, I think he's going to back himself to maybe work his way through this little group of pro drivers, but at least stay where he is in the top 2, especially as he's only got Oliver Ettridge along with him at the moment. Still though, as those battles have gapped out a little bit at the front in the GT4 pros, as we have a look at Brandon Loden, who's in that class, Daniel Thomas is right at the front of the field, but only by a very slim margin. Kieran Sharp pushing him all the way, as we see Elia being pushed all the way by some of the pro drivers, but it is interesting to see that kind of difference between the GT3 pro and the GT4 pro leaders.
Absolutely, and that's quite an important battle actually in your GT4 Pro, because in the previous race it was Sharp and then Thomas, and now it's Thomas and Sharp, so they are the same positions but flip-flop this time around. So championship wise, that is very important indeed. So it looks like they're going to be the ones fighting for the championship, and as ever, every single point is going to count. You do not want to let your championship rival get away, so Sharp is doing his best to try and keep Daniel on his toes as they work their way through this opening part of the race, and especially at this time, just keep the gaps close and then wait for your opportunities a little bit later. If we look at this GT3 though, one thing that does worry me a little bit, best lap time of the race, Watson a 46.5, Cooper a 47.2, that's 7 tenths slower.
Yeah, I mean, Adam Watson's the only driver to have been in the 146s all race long, and he's still in the 146s. His best is a 46.5, his last up was a 46.7. He is just pulling that gap to Ben Cooper behind. He did it 1 week ago. He built that gap up in the opening half of the race and was able to just consolidate his advantage in the second half. It's looking very much like he's trying to do the same. The issues will arise, though, in about even 2 to 3 minutes time, when he starts catching up to the back end of that GT4 field and the lapping is going to start to occur. Difficult always on the first pass because you never really know how to judge it correctly. By the end of the race, it becomes like clockwork, but there's always that risk when the first group of GT3s come to the first group of GT4s that something can go right just through miscommunication more than anything else.
Yeah, it's always weird when we have, at least I see it that way, when we have like a GT3 and GT4 multi-class, because there isn't a crazy difference between them. There's still, GT3 is still fast enough to basically drive around them, but it's still a little bit more awkward than in some other forms of racing. So, especially on a tighter track like this, we're seeing about 8 seconds, maybe 7 seconds a lap faster, the GT3s to GT4s. So when we get to that point of some lapping situations, that could always be just a little bit awkward here and there, as we're looking at this battle for your GT4 Pro leaders. So it's Dan Thomas there in the red and white car, and Kieran Sharp chasing him down in the more grey car there. As they come up towards Hamilton, they are staying so close together, and they do have a Jack Jeffries just a little bit in behind as well. He's also a pro driver.
He is, and I think, the leading group in the GT4s is intriguing. You've got the 3 pros, 2 AMs, and then 3 pros once again. Interesting as well that Coffin is now ahead of Bugembi. Of course, Bugembi ran away towards the end of the race last time out and leads the championship. Coffin was second, though, so as it stands, they'd go into round 3 pretty much dead level on points. But again, as we're seeing in the GT3s, the GT4s do have that split. A group of 3 in the pros, then 2 in the AMs, 3 in the pros, then 5 in the AMs before we get to see Andy Chell, who is a GT3 driver trying to come through. Doesn't necessarily help that there are only 6 GT4 pros remaining in this race, but Richard Simner out after the contact that we saw a couple of minutes ago. But they are almost kind of in 2 races of their own at the moment, with Coffin and Mugembi splitting them. There's about 4 seconds between the groups, and you can almost sense that if they start gapping out, then it really could just become 2 races within themselves.
Yeah, that is it's quite a funny way of putting it. And it's quite important for Maze as well, because he's 3rd in the championship, so he needs to be obviously trying to beat Thomas and Sharp. Not only is he behind them, but he's got Jeffries there, and as you say, a couple of AM drivers in between. So he really needs to try and get up there if he can. Of course, he's not going to be able to just simply do that in the space of a few minutes, but as the race progresses on, that's something that he's going to try and obviously focus on, as we're on board now with Sharp in the Aston Martin, working his way through Palmer. Such a late apex is a really weird corner with how it works out, and it really pinches you on the exit. And this is the corner that you were speaking about down at Agostini. You see how it sort of just opens up on the inside there, really invites a dive bomb. Not quite close enough that time around. There's a bit of a, I don't know if that was a bit late or just a different line there from the 2 drivers.
And it can get difficult through Agostini as well. Drivers can almost misjudge a bit of an overlap. There's incidents that we've seen there. I remember I was here for a race with 2 Ferraris coming out of Agostini. Both of them misinterpreted where they were, and there were a lot of pieces of Ferrari on the circuit after that. And it can happen. It's very easy to do with a little bit of almost you're looking in towards Hamilton at the next corner. You're not really focusing on exactly where the other car is in relation to you. It's very easy just to converge on the lines on the exit. Hopefully we don't see any of that this evening, but if it does, please, it wasn't me. Through we come, though, in towards, again, tricky part of the racetrack at Palmer. Drivers wanting to set up the run into Agostini, which is what they're doing, and it doesn't really help when you've got some slower traffic there in the way, really.
Yeah, so we're getting some GT4 cars in between the GT3s now, and as you see, they can get through fairly quickly, but it just depends exactly where they meet them on the track. If it's through, for instance, Cora and Murray's the final couple of corners, that is going to be very tight and very tricky for the GTs to hold around the outside there. So that could always spice up a couple of battles, or even extend them depending on, let's say, where they meet them on the track. It's always a good one having these multi-class races for the GT3 cars to think about. Often GT3s are just left out there on their own in some series. Having the GT4s really adds a different level for these drivers to try and communicate and work their way through the race so far. But of course, this is in your GT3 category. This is the sort of the mid-pack as such. We're looking at Cheverton there. He's currently in 6th place overall, 5th place in the pro category. He's got Sikorsky in behind him in the green machine, who is 2nd place, as he was doing pretty well at Donington before he had a few spins.
Yeah, and easy to do at Donington Park. Let's see if he's able to keep it a little bit more planted this evening. He's doing a good job of that so far, and he is, gradually closing that gap, Sikorsky to Elia at the front of the field in that GT3 AM class. It's worth thinking about whether the pit strategies can come into that as well. We saw a very wide pit window last week when we were at Donington Park, and drivers came into the pit lane after about well, I think just shy of half an hour in the race, and they didn't come in some until over an hour in the race. A very wide pit window, a lot of overlaps between the drivers. We're only really going to get a good sense of where they are into the final 20 minutes or so. But, you know, track temp at the start of the race was 25 degrees. It's risen to 27 already, and, you know, it's only getting later into the morning. It should rise even further. I'd be interested to see if drivers try and wait it out a little bit longer, because tyres may start to become an issue towards the end of the race if they pit too soon.
Yes, it's a weird strategy if you want to go for the early pit stop, because you basically have a stint and half a stint to do in theory. So obviously you could do it, you know, half then a full, or full then a half, you know, flip-flop that, or go somewhere in between. It's a very interesting one with what you want to do. Obviously the fuel is you know, a bit of an issue as well, but yeah, really it is about the tyres. You want to have the best tyres at the end, but you also potentially want to come in early, get on those fresher tyres and undercut your way towards the front. But to do that, obviously you have to take some risks, know that you're going to go back a bit in the traffic and the track position, and the race will come to you later. So you have to be a little bit more patient in that regard and play the long game. So I think the further you are to the front, you probably want to pit later as you can and try and hold your track position.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And also, when you come into the pit lane slightly earlier, you're probably going to have to put more fuel into the car. And over the course of the race, you're just going to have generally more fuel than drivers who run the fuel tank a little bit drier. So there's always that to think about as well. Running towards turn number 1, though, nearly a move, I think, in the offing as we see them emerge behind the little hill that marks part of the almost the grandstands, if you like, here. It's in the viewing areas. Inside at turn 2 on a GT4 should be easy as you like. Down into Wilson. Gets a little bit tricky, though, as they get onto the brakes. That's Oliver Eckridge trying to make a move past Sikorsky behind. They're swapping positions, actually, in the green and that red car. You can see them coming into frame now. Not really a move on for Eckridge for the time being, but you can see he could be opportunistic here, and the traffic presents opportunities.
Yeah, there's a 4-car train just sort of being backed up into each other as they couldn't go full speed in towards Montreal hairpin. So the 57 tried to go round the outside, you say Eckridge, to get second place in class, where Sikorsky was able to get the run on the exit as there was a bit of traffic blocking the way. So that just shows you how quickly it can change, and it just gets so congested there. All the pro drivers sending it down the inside, trying to make something happen, but if there isn't the space, there just simply isn't the space. As this is the number 4 of Mike Barber, still holding on from Cheverton. They're losing a bit of time to Elia up ahead as well. So Elia has actually lost a couple of places. So Cooper and Concoli have got through in the overall standings, but Cooper is now almost 8 seconds behind Adam Watson, who is living life out the front.
Yeah, and he's living life beautifully at the front. He's just extending that margin lap after lap, just putting down pace. He lost a little bit of time on the last lap to Ben Cooper, but we really are talking 300ths of a second. It's not much that will concern him. Lapping on going in Coram once again. Look like there's going to be anything in towards the final turn at Murray, but Eckridge may have to go for an outside line, and he was off the road ever so slightly as they ran through. This really now is the back end of the big pack of GT4 cars, and there are, I'd say, nearly 90% of the cars on about half a lap now. The back half of the circuit pretty much empty, as all of the GT3s and all of the GT4s converging on each other now.
Yeah, gotta love that, especially the sort of first run through traffic where you have the whole train of GT4s and the whole train of GT3s. It's always the most hectic time of the race, really, before everyone sort of spreads out naturally. So that can, be a bit of a sketchy one, but fortunately for the because the amount of laps it's taken 10 laps to get to that point. Obviously the GT4s have spread out enough for the GT3s that it's not been absolute carnage, which is always a good one. If you get a train of GT4s following each other, then there's just no space. So fortunately they've managed to work their way through there nicely. And enjoying the clean air once again once they get past with the GT4 cars. But this is still a really tight battle up the inside there. That is getting very close there for Elliott, and now he's going to be losing time. Barber's getting the run. Now, of course, Elliott was up in second place overall at one point. He's still leading the AM category, though, so in some ways he doesn't really have to worry about this, but track position is also crucial. Big move in the background as well. Huge dive there down the inside. Barber's going to be losing a position. Cheverton round the outside, and up ahead we've got cars going off. This is absolute chaos.
Yeah, Sikorsky just about going to get to the inside line as they work their way into the bomb hole. Really tricky to pick your right line through there. There's now a car between Sikorsky and Oliver Ettridge. That is Mike Barber. No, it's not Mike Barber. It's Matt Cheverton in the middle as they run their way through. Ettridge under pressure actually from Aiden Carter. They're going around the outside and into the final corner, making a send, but not able to make it work in the end. Really frantic racing, and we kind of expected that with the GT4s coming into play, but big positions that are up for grabs at the moment.
Yeah, now was the Mustang being lapped, so it might be Chris Humphreys there. Yeah, I think it was Chris Humphreys who was that lapped GT3, almost spinning in front of about 4 or 5 of the lap leading GT3s. Absolute crazy scenes there, because if that was a spin, there would have been a big crash. But fortunately, they managed to get out of that one. But yeah, as you say, Sikorsky making some moves. Unfortunately, Cheverton, he thought he was going to be getting up a position, but he actually lost 2 in the end.
Yeah, and not really what he needed whatsoever, and he nearly lost yet another one as well. But, Sikorsky really now close to Gianluca earlier. This is going to be a really intriguing battle at the front of the field, as is the battle between Daniel Thomas and Kieran Sharp. And as they make their way towards the end of one of the longest straights, if not the longest straight in UK motorsports, the Bentley Straight, there's no move to be made for Kieran Sharp, just for the time being at least. I mean, we've seen these opportunities being created for some of the leaders in the GT3s, and that's despite the fact that they haven't got through about a dozen of the GT4s yet. There's still a lot of chances here.
Oh, absolutely. It never really stops, to be honest, once the race gets going and spread out. But yeah, there's still a few of the cars to get through, and it's never over until it's over. And as you can see, that the GT3 is now just getting onto the back of them and trying to find their way through. Talking of getting their way through as well. So this is actually Andy Chell, one of your your GT3 AM drivers in the number 5 there. This is actually technically for overall position with the GT4s, down in 21st place overall, but of course he's working his way through after that spin and incident on the first couple of laps. And I'm sure Thomas isn't going to fight that one too hard. Not for position, not even in the same class. Might as well let him go.
Yeah, and Andy Chell just doing all he can to keep himself on the lead lap, really. Adam Watson isn't a million miles behind as they come in towards Wilson, and it gets a little bit tricky on the brakes. They'll duck and dive their way through and in towards Palmer. They should be able to negotiate their way through on this GT4. Not quite everybody, though. Only one driver can get through in towards Palmer. Agostini may give a few drivers a shot, and Mike Barber, Matt Cheverton, and is it going to be a chance for Franek Sikorsky inside line? Yes, it will. Sikorsky comes through and promotes himself up to yet another position. Well, I guess not really another position, but gets himself ahead of the GT4 and stays close. That's the critical part to the drivers around him, even if they are 2 pros directly in front, because he can't let Gianluca Rellia get too far away. He's a second and a half behind and has done a good job through the first passing of the traffic. He can't just really let that go undone so quickly.
Yeah, and he's got to be careful because, of course, he's got his 2 rivals in class not that far behind. They've got a couple of pro drivers in between them, but the gap is very, very small indeed. Just about a second and a half for Sikorsky against Elias. So every opportunity is still there. Look how close they are staying. I still think Elias is the cork in this bottle. As you see up the road, Concoli and Cooper, they've just absolutely gone after them getting through for the top 3 in your pro category. So I do think Elias is just missing a couple of tenths here so far. Look at them getting backed up into this final corner as well with the GT4 cars, and they're basically bumper to the bumper. Surely some moves down into turn 1 or Montreal.
To make any kind of overtake. Let's see. Looks like he's losing a little bit of time on the main straight, if anything, towards the back of Sikorsky as they all fan out towards the opening corner, just trying to make those correct moves. Cheverton is going to be right behind Mike Barber with Sikorsky and Ettridge right in behind as well. There is no room for any kind of mistake because those 2 AM drivers will say thank you very much and pick up those positions without a moment's notice. Aiden Carter, that is, slightly off the road, very lucky to gather it back up. Clearly made the move down in towards turn 2 on Oliver Ettridge, but contact on the exit. We might have to see what happened to initiate that contact.
Yeah, he was getting pushed the wrong way, so he must have been on the inside and then moving outwards and came across the front of the Ferrari. But of course, just how far along was he and where they were situated, we'll have to see on the replay to find that one out. As you say, caught it very nicely indeed. So here it is, big send up the inside. side by side at the apex they go. He's just trying to squeeze out a little bit. Contact is made, and the car's being flipped the wrong way. Fortunately, the GT4s were able to avoid, but I was difficult to see from the angle exactly. I think he was leaving some room on the outside, but their line's just crossing.
Yeah, and in the end, you can see Ettridge nearly was off the road as well, so difficult to really judge that one, especially when there's the other layout of the circuit that goes off to the left there. There's just a bit more tarmac. It's almost deceiving, really, the bit of tarmac there, because it, comes back to the grass very, very quickly. And I think there's, a little bit of combination of both of those things in that little incident. Still, we race, though, down in towards the end of the Bentley Straight, in towards, of course, Brundle, and coming into Nelson as well. They'll work their way through the bomb hole. It's an interesting battle further back, isn't it? Because when you are the number 25, Nick Scott, ahead of Ricky Pittman, Pittman is a driver that will be having some quite high aspirations for himself going into this race. P2 last week. There's definitely a chance for him to pick up some really, really good points. And with Nathan Anstist, who won the race last week, only a couple of spots ahead, there's definitely some fuel to really push him on up forwards in this race.
Oh, definitely. They both had not the opening 25 minutes of the race that they would have wanted, or maybe the qualifying as well, not quite going their way. Just quickly mention, though, we do have a car coming down pit road. It's John O. We saw him on that previous lap. He had some front end damage. The front bumper was gone off that Porsche, so some damage involved there. We're also getting Chris Humphreys, who's involved in that opening lap crash, the 26 car, the Mustang who almost won a bit earlier. He was also back down pit road, so both of those drivers on the same lap having some issues. Hopefully they weren't linked, but I think that they were just not enjoying it at this moment in time, as we're going back to this battle up towards the front or middle pack of your GT3s, still working for a couple of the GT4 cars.
And you can just see them bobbing and weaving down that straight, trying to find how many GT4s they can work their way past. Elia just getting congested at the moment in the position that he's in. He's behind Mike Barber, but he's ahead of the GT4. Is he to the inside line of the bomb hole? Well, I think he's just about going to get ahead as they work their way in towards Coram. 1, 2. Is it going to be 3 on the inside of GT3s working their way through? Yes, it is. And eventually, Sikorsky manages to work his way through and keep himself right on the tail of Gianluca Elia. I mean, Elia had that fantastic margin that he built up in the opening couple of laps, but almost the painstaking work of Sikorsky to pick his way through the traffic, smartly and calmly has really paid off for him. Inside line, though, for the pro driver of Matt Cheverton, he's now ahead of Gianluca, and Gianluca has no buffer between himself and rivals now.
And now Sikorsky comes to the outside. This is for your lead in your AM category between the 6 and the 46. Unfortunately, Elia has gone backwards after a strong start to this race. He really has slowed down in the last 10-15 minutes or so. And Sikorsky's been looking so aggressive in this race already. So Cheverton at some point got back past Sikorsky as well. They did swap around at one point. Now Sikorsky is there trying to get through on the 6, and that will be for your race lead. And after Sikorsky not getting as many points as he would have wanted, as I was mentioning earlier, after a few incidents in Donington, this would be a great points haul, but of course still an hour to go, but let's see if he can find his way past.
Yeah, and as the 390 has a bit of difficulty coming through the corner, that is Matt Cheverton on the back of one of the GT4s in front. He is trying to make a way through, but losing a little bit of time. He's losing ever more time to the likes of Mike Barber and Rachel Conkley, who've been able to work their way through a little bit easier. Down we come on the Bentley Straight once again. Sikorsky with another easy time passing some traffic, and the blinking car isn't going to help either. To have 1, 2, and 3 in that AM class split by all of, 3/4 of a second really shows how competitive this class is going to be over the rest of the season.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough pick to work out who is going to be your champion at the end of the year, and especially with how the calendar goes so quick as well. As I mentioned earlier, just one mistake here or there, and that could really cost you. So you've got to be taking these opportunities, and sometimes you've got to do that the aggressive way and trying to win the positions yourself. Cheverton's done that on the last couple of laps. The issue is he's 21 seconds. I read Mustang there, 21 seconds behind Adam Watson. We haven't spoken about him in a while. He's now got a 12-second gap to Cooper up ahead. Of all this battling, Cheverton and even Barber a bit further up the road, they've lost so much time sitting behind that 6 car.
They have, and Elia looking a little bit vulnerable at the moment, isn't he? In the position that he's in. He had those 4 cars, those 4 pro cars between himself and Sikorsky, but it's disappeared in the space of less than half an hour in this race, and he's now got a real fight on his hands. It was disappointment at the end of last week as well. He looked like he was set for a really strong finish, but a little bit of contact going off the road in the final couple of laps meant that he dropped down the order a little bit and didn't pick up the points that he was looking for. So for Elia and Sikorsky, both of them are going to be absolutely desperate for the win this evening, and with good reason as well. If this was a 10-15 round season, they may be able to sit back and think, well, we'll pick up the points for a P1 or a P2, but when you need the points so urgently in a championship like this, you know, you can rest assured that there is going to be some battles between the drivers, as long as they can make sure they get through the traffic all right, which they just about do. Can Sikorsky follow through? Will Ettridge go for the move? Ettridge to the inside, Sikorsky goes for it late. Oh, that was a little bit late for Sikorsky, but he got it done in the end.
Yeah, he had to attack the GT4 to defend from the 57, and Ettridge in behind. They probably wouldn't have gone for that normally, but Ettridge was forcing the mistake, forcing the error. In the end, it's actually worked out perfectly for Sikorsky, because Ettridge lost some time in that traffic. He lost a good, what's that, second in behind. So really, really brave there from the 46, but once again, just inches away from a crash. And he's had to be so aggressive to get himself in this position so far this race, as we go obviously under the 1 hour mark to go. So a third already down, and I wonder if those early pit stops will be thinking about making it. If not, they'll be going for probably another 20-30 minutes.
Yeah, we'll be interested to see if anybody goes around that half distance mark as well, which will arrive in just shy of 14 minutes, and whether the drivers will push it as far and as late into this race as they possibly can. I think the latter may be a move chosen by many, but we will wait to see which strategy develops as the primary option for many of these drivers over the course this evening. This group of GT3s really have provided a lot of the racing action so far in this race, but they are by no means alone in battles. You know, we've got the likes of that Scott Pittman battle over P15 and P16, but generally in the GT4s, I think with the lapping that's occurred, very difficult to stay very close to cars, because GT3s just fill those gaps, and then all of a sudden you find yourself a second behind the car in front of you. It's difficult to gain that time back when there's GT3s swarming around you all the time.
Yeah, it's a weird way, it's a weird one how the different classes work in different ways. Obviously the GT3s are always being aggressive, trying to fill in the gaps as you say, but then the GT4s, they're trying to have their own race, but they've got to be looking in their mirrors, especially when you get an aggressive train of GT3s like we have here. 4 cars there, all going for position, and they really need to, GT4s need to be careful in that regard. Of course, they have the right to their position as well. At the same time, when you see some GT3s barging their way through, could have a bit of self-preservation as well to try and get to the end of the race. As we are seeing, this is Andrew Pike. So he is currently 7th place in class. He's got Carter just up ahead. They are quite a way off, unfortunately. The next car, so they've got about 3.5 seconds up to Cheverton, the red Mustang you can see just in the background of the shot. These couple of Corvettes try and chase it down. So they are just missing a little bit of speed there, but it's still good that they can see Cheverton at least. Yeah,
they are in this tight group as well, as we see. I think that's Louis Hesketh down pit road. It may have been somebody else, but Louis Hesketh is in the pit lane. Even if you are a few seconds behind, you know, you can see your rivals, and again, even though there are a few arms in the way, which means that even if you gain the positions, you're not going to be gaining any points, there is always that, it's almost like a carrot being dangled in front of you, isn't it, really? You can see the target, and you can almost feel like you've got a little bit more pace to unlock in the car, and particularly for someone like Aidan Carter, who nearly got through an Oliver Ettridge not too long ago. There's definitely going to be a little bit of motivation there to go after the cars in front, something that I think we can say in the GT3s that we can't necessarily say in the GT4s with some of the gaps that have opened up.
Yes, absolutely. It's also Anstis down pit road with Hesketh as well. So both of those drivers going for the earlier stop strategy. So let's see how that one works out. Of course, Anstis, after winning that previous race at Donington, not having such a strong race here. So maybe trying something different. And yeah, regarding the fuel, of course, if you start with a full tank of fuel, then you only need to pick up half an hour. of fuel, but then you're carrying that weight for a lot longer in some ways. So it really depends. But if you start with a full tank, pit off half an hour, then also you have a shorter pit stop as you only have half a tank to fill up. So there's a lot of different maths that the drivers will be going on there. I'm sure we'll find out in about 45 minutes time who the contenders are and which way is going to work.
Yeah, I think it's gonna take quite a while for us to really get a good grip of where they are in relation to each other after they make their pit stops. But one of the reasons why this series is so interesting. Sikorsky still on the back of Elliott. Surprised he's not gone for a move just yet. This is still the closest leading margin, but we haven't really touched on Thomas and Sharp for quite a while. They are still pretty much locked together, only 8/10 between them at the front of the GT4 Pro field. The next biggest gap is for Joe Coffin of 2.5 seconds in that GT4 AM class, with Adam Watson running away out in the front, leaving everybody for dust. He'll be, driving to Spa before some drivers have finished the race, it seems, this evening. He's having such a fantastic opening half an hour or so. Let's see if he can continue to pull this gap further. But it's always nice when you have that margin at the front of the field, isn't it? But at the same time, the pressure that you can almost learn from when you have this leading kind of battle can almost benefit you towards the end of the season if you're put into more difficult situations again.
Yeah, absolutely. You can, as you say, learn from your, I was about to say previous mistakes, but previous experiences, I think, is the better way of putting that. And you just get used to being in certain situations, and it just makes life that little bit easier. As we come up to Joshua Bigembe, and this is the driver who won the previous race in front of Joe Coffin, and now they're swapped positions as well. So the same in GT4 Pro as GT4 AM, where you have the drivers, swapped positions. He does have a car right up behind him as well. I believe that is Ryan Moore, a pro driver. Who is currently there 5th place in your pro category, your GT4 Pro. But Bigembe obviously trying to chase down on Coffin. He's lost almost 4 seconds in the opening half an hour, and of course we'll be trying to reverse that.
Yeah, and you've got enough time to try and reverse something like that. 53.5 minutes is more than a fair amount of time. I think, this kind of length of race, 90 minutes, is just, it's not quite an endurance race, but it's far longer than most of these drivers will generally do, in league aspects, in, shorter races that they'll just jump into on the iRacing platform. And so there is a lot of almost freshness to this kind of series where drivers have to adapt a little bit more than they generally have to do, and the ability to do that, I think, is going to be reflected in the championship standings come the end of the season, and particularly by the leaders at the moment. The ability to sit and wait in some of these battles, as we've seen the likes of Sharp and Thomas do, and the ability to almost come back towards the end of the race that Bigembe will be trying to do as well, really shows a different level of driver that we get here in the Motorsports UK Esports GT Challenge, but you wouldn't necessarily get if you just jumped into a random race on the iRacing platform. So really good to see the quality of drivers that we have here this evening, and the quality of battles as well. Nothing really seems like it's done at all yet in this race, with so many close, particularly leading battles. It's up in the air for some really important points.
Oh, definitely. And even talking of the overall lead, on the previous 2 laps, Ben Cooper has been faster than Adam Watson out the front. And Cooper, his fastest lap is now into the 46s as well. We were saying earlier, Watson was the only driver in the 46s. Well, Cooper's got some speed as well. It's a shame he wasn't able to just follow him through at the start. But I think there is some speed in that 959 machine. So we'll have to see if Watson makes any sorts of mistakes, or gets feels any sort of pressure at some point. Maybe that might be something. As Carter, I think, has come down pit road as well. 3rd place last time out. Not quite there today. He was in about 5th place before he came down pit road, but he's the next driver to get a new fresh set of boots.
Yeah, we are starting to see more and more drivers come down pit lane now than we were before. I think for Aidan Carter coming in now could probably suggest the want to do a bit of an undercut here on some of the rivals around them. I think there's definitely a good chance at that as well, as we do see Aidan Carter leaving the pit lane, and actually the gorgeous bit of clean air in front I think there's a lot of room for them to drive into here. We'll see what Aiden can do over the next 5-10 minutes here. Really good position to find yourself in. Only a couple of GT4s actually ahead, and then a big gap up in front to the next group of GT3. Sikorsky and Elia, Ettridge as well. Which of these guys is going to blink first in this race? Still not over the half distance mark, so you'd be surprised if one of them blinks too soon. But they've been running in this order now for quite some time. You feel like something's going to have to shift at some point.
Yeah, every few laps, though, they have swapped positions a little bit. I mean, remember, the 6 was out the front. Cheverton was, in between Sikorsky and Ettridge as well. So he's got past a couple of drivers. They are making moves every now and again. Of course, it's not exactly like, DRS pass, where it's just every lap going past each other. But you work up to it. You get behind for a few laps, and you see an open door, and then you go through. Cheverton actually made that strong move down the inside as well into turn 1. It's a very brave move, actually, doing that in turn 1 here. Riches is such a fast corner, very short braking zone, but obviously that was the opportunity that he saw. Bit of traffic there, that's going to slow them down. Anyone making some moves up the inside, and that's getting very close. 76 trying to hold it around the outside. This is actually Tofty. He swaps to the inside, goes Sikorsky. Can he make the move down the inside of Palmer's? Very opportunistic, using the traffic to good effect, and he gets past and takes the class lead.
Yeah, fantastic move for Sikorsky. Got the right line, and Elia almost stuck on the outside. By the time they work their way into Palmer's, Ettridge going to try and follow suit. He drives for the line. A flashing of the lights as they run their way in towards Agostini, and out of Agostini, in fact. But Sikorsky now leads the class, and for Elia, it was nearly a tumble from first to third. When he's been leading this racing class, at least for 40 minutes, it would have been disaster. But he is still there, and he's still able to fight around. The question really for Franek Sikorsky is, how far in front can he run? Can he build up any kind of advantage before a possible Ettridge move on Elia?
I think he will. I think there's some pace in these cars that were sat behind the 6, and it seems like Sikorsky is going to be able to hold on, at least in this opening half a lap, since he's been able to get that class lead. Very important indeed. But actually, so of course, Ettridge, he's in the AM category as well. So 6 of Elliott needs to be very careful here. Otherwise, he'll go from first to third in a matter of probably 1 or 2 laps.
Yeah, it could be very easy to tumble down the field, and it's getting nearly stuck on the outside line again on a GT4 would have been an absolute disaster. This time they are coming through to lap James Smaggersgale through the final corner. There we go, see Elia come through. Ettridge follows suit as well, but Franek Sikorsky already pretty much a full second in front, caught up a little bit into turn 1. Richards with a couple of GT4s ahead. Well, now they're off the road. That's one way to make sure that they're out of the way, but it'll mean that Elia has to try and follow suit, and he will to the inside at turn number 2. Stretching out that Sikorsky is doing means that Elia's going to become increasingly more desperate to make the moves at the same time as the 46.
Yeah, that was Brandon Loudon in the GT4 Pro category, down 6th place in class, just going very wide there at turn 1. Huge send up the inside from the 6th from Andy Chell, or on Andy Chell I should say, who's a lap down now and getting out of the way. But that was definitely a flashing lights to be like, I'm coming through, you get out of my way. And it seemed to make sense, but it's now over a second the lead for Sikorsky in the AM category. This is really starting to open up. I won't be surprised if Sikorsky is going to get a good run here before we get to their pit stop.
Yeah, I mean, flashing lights, can mean any number of things now in the world of sim racing. It means, let me through, be annoyed, like, what are you doing? A bit like using your horn in some parts around the world will mean different things. There, I do think it was, I'm coming through, you can either move, or we are going to have some contact. And in the end, there was no contact because the move or the line was left very much readily available for the more front-running driver. Kieran Sharp is very much a front-running driver in this race, and he's with Daniel Thomas right at the front of the field. They've pulled away from Jack Jeffries, that gap nearly up to 10 seconds now, and then they've got a further about 6.5 seconds back to Christian Mendes, who's with Ryan Mole. So at the moment, all's going well for the two of them. The question really is it's pretty much been 50% of the race completed. How long is it going to be before they start tussling it out for the win?
Yeah, indeed. I guess in terms of a strong battle, they'll wait until, the last 20-30 minutes. So we're still a little bit before that, and around the time of the pit stop, potentially before they go absolutely hammer and tongs. But they're working their way nicely into a good position to make it a two-way battle, and that's always what you want. If you're playing these longer games, you don't want to have 3, 4, 5 cars involved there, as there's too many variables. When it's just you and one other person, you can sort of control the situation a little bit more. You can counter what they do at the pit stop. You can really work out what they're going to do through traffic and try and find your way past. But for now, they're working their way nicely, as we're just coming up to half race distance on this lap.
And it is great to see that with half race distance being approached, we still have 39 cars circulating the track right now. Only 3 have dropped out in the form of Chris Humphreys, John Earl and Richard Simler, and we've seen a couple of their incidents over the course of this race. Really great to see so many drivers still sticking it in there for this second round of the season. I think there's definitely something to be said about the fact that drivers, again, will know that, I know we're flogging this point like a dead horse, but the amount of times it's worth pointing out that this being a short season means that every point is critical, really is worth mentioning again and again, because these drivers are going to be in higher pressure scenarios. If they haven't had a good opening race, they need the points now. Sikorsky is a good example of that. He's worked his way to the front. The question is, how can he consolidate his lead towards the front of the field? But for a lot of these guys, if they're fighting for championships, as Pittman goes to the inside line on Zed Murray, I didn't think he was going to go for a move. I don't think Murray did either. But in the end, it's settled down. But going for the move is going to be critical, but knowing that it's safe is also important, and I think the lack of moves so far in this race shows that the drivers aren't necessarily confident that they can get it done at some points in this circuit.
Oh, Zed Murray there, really getting close to that GT4 car. But yeah, you're absolutely correct, and Pittman's one of those drivers. He, of course, finished second in class last time out, needs the points this time. To consolidate the fact that he's going to be a championship contender, but he's down in 7th place. The issue for him is look at the gap, not just to him and Murray, but look at ahead of Murray, 33 seconds it says there, up towards the next car. That is a long, long way that he's going to have to chase down on Nick Scott, the next car up the road. But this might be the opportunity in towards the bottom hole. Side by side they go. He's got himself enough alongside to at least have an opportunity, but off the road goes the Corvette. That makes it a bit easier for him, as we're going to see that move being completed. Zed Murray going off the road. Hesketh is actually going to come through in the background as well. So in the end, that was quite a nice, easy move there from Pittman.
And it's worth noting as well, of course, Pittman has pitted in this race, as much as his name would suggest, but Zed Murray has not. Ricky looking to try and almost follow through with Aiden Carter at the moment. He's only a couple of seconds up the road. He's actually a long way up the road. They're just similar distances off of their overall race leader. That was the big moment. Lucky not to snap back onto the racing circuit. Well, that could have ended far worse, and he may have been joining Richard Simner in the pit lane a little bit early in this race.
Yes, absolutely. That was not the best rejoin in the world, although Richard did have some extra extenuating circumstances, and I can see in the Discord he has apologised for that. So definitely good one there on Richard. Not a nice situation though, as he obviously took out some other cars on that time as well. As we work our way through the first couple of corners, we come up to Elia, who's still about a second behind Sikorsky. So I thought the floodgates were going to open, but not just yet. Big look down the inside there from the 57. Don't know where he thought he was going. Wasn't enough space for a Ferrari to get through there, and the 6 holds on.
Yeah, not by much though, and Elia's still got quite a bit of work to be doing here to make sure that this doesn't go away from him in this race. Etridge flashing the lights again, probably letting the GT4 know that he is going to be using that inside line, and in the end he very much does as they work their way around Agostini. Elliot's just, he's been harassed, hasn't he, really, for the last half an hour now. He's not been left alone. Is that someone off? Yes, it is somebody off. Who is that off the circuit? I'm not too sure who that is. I'm trying to look at my timing page to see who's dropping down. I can't quite spot who it is. We're going to
actually Tofty in the 78 machine. Big send up the inside into Hamilton on the GT4. That was Cheverton, I think. The GT3, big send up the inside of Tofty, and that could be penalties coming his way as well. 5th place in class as race leader comes down pit road just after halfway.
Yeah, interesting that Adam Watson has chosen now to be the time for him to come into the pit lane, but I mean, he's the driver in more control than any other in this race. He, I'm sure, has all of the fuel numbers, all of the pit numbers totted up perfectly in his head. Rachel Conkley was the driver that we saw pit first, really, in the GT3 Pro class last race. She's not going for a similar strategy this week, maybe showing that last week it didn't work out in the way that the she or the team would have been hoping for. Adam Watson, though, with his extended time in pit lane, will drop down towards the back end of the top 6. I think may even fall behind James King and Pedro Lee Silva. He will indeed, which means he'll come out of the pit lane 8th, but that's not going to worry him, is it?
No, this is always one issue when you pit earlier when you're leading, is that you go back out of your position. So obviously if you're leading, everyone pits behind you. When you pit, you're of course going to come back out in first place, nice and easy. But if it's the other way around, you're going to lose that track position, and there's always the opportunity that you could get caught up in something, even though you're still net the race leader. So he has to be careful in this situation. It looks like he's got mostly GT4 cars around him at the moment, no GT3s, which is quite nice, but definitely needs to be careful, because when he makes the moves on the GT3s, they'll technically be for position. It's not going to be like blue flags, and people will fight him, even though technically it doesn't really matter at that point in the race.
And it's, you know, it's a fair point to make, and I think there's always going to be that not pressure, but also slight concern hanging over Adam Watson's head, because if you have such a big lead, it can almost just, you know, play on your mind a little bit, can't it? Once you're fighting for the race lead lap after lap, in the same way that Daniel Thomas and Kieran Sharp are over the course of this race, you never really feel like you can play it safe. But the second that you're off your game ever so slightly and play a little bit safe, it creates a big old risk, and the possibility that you make a mistake, you know, by almost being too safe in the end, and that is something that I think is going to have to be considered by championship leader and net race leader Adam Watson in this race. But you know, I mean, he's shown the class that is required to not have to worry about that kind of thing in the first place. Ettridge, podium last week. He's looking to make it 2 from 2, looking to make himself the only driver to be making himself a double podium sitter in the GT3 Iron Class.
Yes, indeed. I was about to say there's been a few others in the other classes, but you're right, in that class in particular, Anstis and Pittman not having the days that they would have wanted. So Pittman is down in 15th place, Anstis in 17th place, so that's 6th and 8th in their class. So definitely not the way that they would have wanted in terms of getting the podium, and they are also over a minute off their leaders as well, though there are pit stops situations involved in that as well. So really not what it would have been. So Ettridge has the opportunity to lead the championship here, which would be a very nice one going into the mid part of the season.
Yeah, and Ettridge, a driver who, again, not necessarily winning the races, but pick up 2 P3 to lead the championship. It just shows that consistency could be a really important factor for you in a short championship like this. You could win, you know, 4 of the races and DNF in the other one, but if you finish second in all 5 of them, you're obviously going to be winning the championship. So chances for Ettridge, but I mean, chances to go up into P2, that's really what he's looking for. And that bright yellow front nose cone is going to almost be annoying Gianluca Corellia now, because it's been there consistently and quite rudely as well in the wing mirrors for quite some time. Problem for Oliver is he can't find the way, find the line and get the move done at any point on the circuit. A problem that I don't think drivers are likely to have when we get to Spa in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, it's one of those things when the Porsche looks in the mirror, it's just going to be a block of yellows. That is your GT3 AM leader, Sikorsky. He comes down pit road and is taking this opportunity for tyres before Elliot and Ettridge, his championship rivals. So that's going to be an important one for him. So this is just over the half race distance. So they haven't gone fully 1 hour into the race, about 52 minutes and a bit served. So they probably still had a tiny bit more fuel left in, but he wanted to just come in early, get on those fresher tyres and try and hold on to that track position.
Yeah, interesting that the leader comes into the pit lane first. We'll see how that can shake itself out when the others do decide to come down pit lane, but how long that's going to be, and we still don't quite know. But what we do know is that this battle between the GT4 Pro leaders of Daniel Thomas and Kieran Sharp has been sitting like this for nearly the last hour in this race. Sharp has just been sitting there, waiting, biding his time. Is he just going to go for it towards the end of the race? I mean, I can't imagine he's going to settle for second after being so close for so long, right?
Maybe they're just completely matched on speed, or maybe Sharp is just holding in there and not doing anything too silly just yet. But I would assume they're both pushing to the limit. Looking at the gap that they've got behind them as well, they've got 9 seconds, 8 seconds to Jack Jeffries, so they do have the pace of the field. And I think they're just biding their time before having the battle. Seen this many times, especially in MotoGP in real life. Seen the likes of Marquez just likes to sit behind, waits for that opportunity. Because if they start battling now, just A, it's risky, and B, it just might bring other people into the fray. And you just want to obviously have your 2 cars to focus on. So I think he's doing a good job. And as you see with the bit of traffic there as well, the 23 closes up and just stays big in the mirrors, really.
Yeah, I mean, you can guarantee that had they been battling race long, Jack Jeffries, who's only 10 seconds behind these two, regardless of the fact they haven't been battling, he would be right in this battle for the lead if they had been going side by side on more than a couple of occasions, because it doesn't take a lot to put yourself offline, lose a little bit of time. That can spiral. Go off the track, that's 2 seconds. You know, push another driver wide, that could be 2 or 3. And that gap will disintegrate very, very quickly indeed. So interesting that they are waiting to keep this battle alive. The gap between Elia and Ettridge, though, that has ballooned out from that 1 second margin. 3.6 seconds it currently sits at, and it's not looking any better for Ettridge with every passing corner. This could be really interesting to see, because is this necessarily a pickup in Elia's pace, or is Ettridge getting a little bit stuck? Well, from this evidence, it would feel like he's getting a little bit stuck rather than Elia getting himself a little bit more pace at this point in the race.
Now, there's definitely a mistake, because on the opening sector of this lap, pretty much everyone's in the 33s. Ettridge did a 37. Yeah. So that's where that 3 seconds is. It's all in that first sector on this lap. There must have been something going on that's caused him. It's 3 seconds. That's actually quite a bit of time as well. He had a little spin, chunked the curb like he did there, or just slightly got off the track. Sector 1 is not that long around here. It's really just the first couple of corners. So I wonder if there's maybe a bit of traffic as well. But it's weird to lose that much time in one go.
Maybe a bit of contact down at turn 2, not too sure. 34 minutes still left to run here at Snetterton for the second round of this Motorsports UK Esports GT Challenge in 2025. And some intriguing championship battles at the front of all classes for the time being at this stage of the season. Joshua Bagembe was leading the race. He leads the championship, but he's going to come down pit road to take his pit stop. Interestingly enough, though, he's ahead of Joe Coffin, and fairly so. I mean, Bagembe comes in from the lead, but neither have made their pit stop before this point. And Bagembe, all of a sudden, putting his foot down and extending the gap in a similar manner to what he did last week. Wasn't leading the race for the first half or so, but when he got into the lead, he started to pull away, and he's just done that so far in the last 10-15 minutes or so.
Yeah, looks like he's down pit road this time around, of course, so we'll have to see how the strategy works out. Interesting that some of the leaders in 3 classes coming in early. We still need to see what Thomas and Sharp are going to do in your GT4 Pro, but very interesting that leaders coming in early. I would expect, you know, if it was me, I would have gone as long as possible, but I guess it depends how your tyres are holding up as well, because if it gets to a point where you're losing too much time from that, or you feel you're losing too much time for that, you've got to come in and get the fresh set of tyres indeed. So definitely quite an interesting choice for those drivers at some point. He's Ethan Marone, as he's in 10th place currently in his class, and he's trying to chase down. It's one of the closest battles on the track. It's Carl Chase just up ahead in the 71.
And the 71 doing a decent enough job to keep where he is for the time being. Ethan Marone, though, I'm sure wouldn't mind making a move or two to promote himself from the P10 that he currently occupies towards the back of the overall race classification right now. Rachel Conkley into the pit lane for the front of the field in the GT3 Pros. She will drop all the way behind Adam Watson, of course, and Pedro Silva, probably down in towards that P8 area. A lot of drivers who are extending ever further will get themselves to that 2/3 race distance before they even think about coming into the pit lane, which is really interesting to see. There is Rachel Conkley in the Audi, waiting, sitting there in the box. It's a good job these aren't real pit boxes, because she'd be parked next to, well, not a garage there, is it?
Yeah, it's a weird one as well. It's obviously like a stepped, old school stepped pit lane as well, with obviously the actual pit box area is flat. So the fact that the pit lane is on a hill, they have to have these steps going up. So if you drive right by the garage doors, you go all the way down the pit lane. So fortunately, they were able to find their pit box and now back out onto the racetrack, and actually in a very good position there for Rachel, actually. So I'll see how this one works out once the others make their stops. We're coming up to that half-hour mark, though, so almost an hour gone in this race, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a few more laps before we see everyone else come down pit road, at least in the GT3s.
Yeah, and in the GT3s, for the time being, it's Ben Cooper leading the race, but realistically, overall, we are looking at, well, he's not going to be in the race for much longer, actually, because he's into the pit lane. That's good timing. Mike Barber will lead the race unless he comes down pit road. It will, of course, be Adam Watson who should retake the lead when everybody has made their stops. Mike Barber will have a turn, though, at the front of the field. Kieran Sharp would probably like a turn at the front of the field, but for the time being, he's content to sit behind and wait. I wonder if he's just saving fuel in P2. Wouldn't be a bad idea, because, you know, he could pick the lap after Daniel Thomas and put less fuel in the car to get himself to the end, do the overcut, come out in front, and not actually have to make the move on the circuit. That could be a way of getting himself to the front of the field.
That's always a good one if you don't have to physically make the move. Always saves a little bit of effort. But here we are seeing, of course, the effective race leader there, Adam Watson, come through, and obviously the drivers in behind working their way with the pit stop, but it looks like he's going to cycle back to the front. Just 3 drivers now, Barber, Elliott and Pike, all not stopped just yet.
Yes, still a few of them that we're waiting on in this race as we tick over the 1 hour mark completed. Less than 30 minutes to run here at Snetterton. So many cars still circulating the circuit, which is fantastic to see. We did see a bit of a race of attrition towards all parts of the order last week, where we had all manner of drivers out of the race, but only 3 not in the race, and only a handful that are a lap down on their class leader. In fact, there's 6 of them. Which is a little bit more than a handful, but there you go. 6 drivers who are a lap down in this race on their own class leader. So highly competitive, which is what we want to be seeing. And with the leading battles that we've got so far, the likes of this GT4 Pro class, I think it sets us up well to go into the final few weeks, and particularly to go over to Spa, Cam, a very different circuit. I think it's going to be a little bit more frantic because drivers know they can make the moves, but to build yourself a good base in terms of championship points here can really allow you the freedom to go and make those moves at Spa.
Yes, it's a proper I'm about to say a proper track. There's not to say Donington and Snetterton are, but what I mean is it's a proper like Grand Prix track. It's big, it's wide, it's open, and it's not the tight and twisty nature that we see from the British tracks. So that'll be a lot more easy, let's say, with the overtakes. A lot of drafting as well around there. So the strategy and the fuel numbers could actually end up being quite important there if we get a group of drivers all sitting together. So I think that's going to be a very nice round in the middle of the calendar. Of course, we have an extra week's break, so we're back to back on all of the races apart from this gap between Snetterton and Spa. So there's an extra week's gap. It'll be on the 18th of March in 2 weeks' time, the next time we go racing. So a little bit longer for the drivers to practice and get themselves ready, although it's obviously a track that everyone knows. Spa is on pretty much every calendar, but for good reason.
Yeah, it is, very much so, and a track that's, appearing on more calendars for some British shows. I think GB3, GB4, or at least GB3 are going over there, or have been going over there the last couple of seasons, so it's a track that, those familiar to Motorsports UK will know very well indeed. Daniel Thomas, though, still right on the tail, still just ahead of Kieran Sharp, I should say, and doing a fantastic job to manage that gap, but can't go wide, doing a fantastic job to manage their race. And even though Dylan Mystery's got the Uni Jack on the top of the car, you don't really want to be seeing it from the grass. You want to be seeing it on the tarmac, but he's just dropping another couple of positions. There we see Oliver Eckridge try and work his way through. He's dropped so much time now to Gianluca Elio, and it almost feels like it's a different driver to the one we saw at the start of the race.
Yeah, Eckridge is really stuck behind it. He's lost out so much in recent times, and to be honest, he's not going to be able to challenge in that situation. If there's a couple of seconds, sure, but when it gets up to this sort of time, as Elliot actually comes into the pit lane, but it was about 8 seconds or so before that. And to be honest, you can't compete with that. A couple of seconds, you can think about it. That you can't do that just on pure pace in a championship that's so close like this. So an hour and 3 minutes or so on the clock into the race, and we see your GT3 AM leader come in.
And finally, Elliott makes his way down pit road. Ettridge going longer than all three of those front runners in that GT3 AM class, at least from the opening hour or so in this race, where Sikorsky comes out in relation to Gianluca is going to be particularly interesting, I do think. There's only now a couple of cars between them as they work their way, well, at least Elliott works his way down pit road. We'll keep an eye on that timing tower. In fact, this is Rachel Conkley fighting with Gianluca earlier on the exit, which means that Elliott's actually got a decent enough margin to Sikorsky. It's about a second or so. Where is he? You can just probably see him in the background. There's Rachel back to the inside. These two not leaving each other alone. There is Sikorsky, and Elliott doing a fantastic job to go longer and make it work for himself.
Yeah, because one important factor, the earlier you pit, the more fuel you have to take. So, yeah, definitely potentially an important factor. Of course, the longer you stay as well, then you're on less fuel and you're doing basically quali laps for a little bit if you can keep the tyres going. So it hasn't worked out for Sikorsky, who thought he was going to be having a nice potential race victory. Now he's going to work for it again in the final 25 minutes.
Yeah, rinse and repeat for Franek Sikorsky. He's just, I mean, he felt like he got that move done, I'm sure, and felt like he was able to probably run away a little bit at the front of the field, but he's got to do it all over again, and it's going to be tricky to work his way back through, but he knows he's done it once. He'll likely back himself to do it once again. Ettridge, though, in the pit lane. Expect him to come out, well behind these two, and with the fact that he was some 8 seconds down on Elliott when Elliott came into the pit lane. But we will see the blend as they come through the final couple of corners. By that I mean Elliott and Sikorsky. Ettridge still up on the jacks. He is going to be miles behind the other two.
Indeed, we've also got James King there in the BMW coming in. And also in the background, we've got Andy Chell, who of course pits basically at the end of the first lap. So that's why he's pitting again at the same time, because he's effectively on the same strategy, just doing that extra pit stop on the opening lap. So here is your battle for the GT3 AM lead. Elliott in the white Porsche, and then Sikorsky in the green Ferrari going at it. Of course, they got Concurley just up ahead as well, but looks like the pro driver is pulling away from these AMs, and it's just these two guys to focus on each other, with Ettridge some 8.5 seconds behind. So he really has dropped down, hasn't he? You just see the Ferrari in the very background of the shot there coming through Palmer's, and he is completely taking himself out of that, because in 23 minutes, he's not going to be chasing down that sort of time.
He's not, and feels like he's leaving himself a little bit too much to do in this race. But Gembe gets through on Coffin, though. That could be a really important move, as those two are fighting for the lead in the GT4 AM category. Both have made their way down pit road, and Coffin now actually 4 seconds behind. I wonder what's happened to him, unless he's just come out of the pit lane, which could be a reason. Around the outside, there's Sikorsky. I don't know where Elliott thinks he's going on the inside line, but Sikorsky plows around the outside, back into the lead in this race from nowhere, it seems.
Oh my word, the bravery from this 46. We've seen it multiple times today. He's not afraid of making a move, and that is another one to add to the list. What a send around the outside of Brundles into Nelson, and he is now leading the race. I thought Elliott was going to be able to hold on to that on the inside line. The outside is so sketchy and dangerous, it really pinches you, but the 46 made it work.
And he's back to the front of the field once again. Elliott, nearly looking for it down in towards turn 1. Not going to work out there for him. Looking left, maybe looking right to the inside line at turn number 2. If he can make any kind of move work there, but a little bit too far back to make any kind of lunge. But there is a little bit of contact, unsettling the rear end of the 46, but in the end, unsettling Elliott just that little bit more. They've got traffic to come up to as well. This is by no means over, and we've still got 22 minutes in this race to sort it out.
Yes, and oh, look at all the carnage up ahead as well. Quite a few cars, including some GT4 traffic for these guys to get through. Now some GT4s making some moves on each other. I think it's Marone and Amy Grimm as they try and go side by side. The 14's letting the traffic through in towards Hamilton. Amy not quite so easy for the move. And Sikorsky half on the grass as he sends it down the inside to get that gap. And what a move he's made, because Elia has completely got caught up there, and it's going to be about almost a second as he's gained that time through the traffic, and the 6 cars lost out once more.
Yeah, really good news for Franek Sikorsky if he's able to pull this gap just that little bit more ahead of Gianluca Elia in the same way that he did when he overtook him the first time in this race. Hopefully, though, for him, well, I mean, there's no more pit stops to worry about in terms of losing it in the same way, but I think he'll back himself to pull away from here, and Gianluca really may just be looking behind to make sure that Oliver Eckridge doesn't get too close into the mirrors once again. Meanwhile, while this battle has been going on, you're going to be shocked to know this, Kieran Sharp is still just behind Daniel Thomas. They've been like this for so long. Actually, having said that, Daniel Thomas is in the pit lane. Oh, I got excited for a second.
I saw it the same as you, but as soon as the position lost, the pit message came up as well. So Thomas from the lead comes in early. Kieran Sharp is going to go out there. He's going very far into this race. Of course, GT4's able to go quite far. Naturally, being a bit slower than the GT3s. The field goes a bit longer, and let's see how this one is going to work out. Does Sharp have any tyres left to do some sort of quali lap on that less fuel, or is Thomas with the fresh tyres on the outlap going to be able to hold on to it? And also, actually, how much further is Sharp going to go? Is it just going to be one lap and cover Thomas off, or does he want to try something crazy and really try and stretch that fuel number?
Yeah, let's see, but there is now separation between Kieran Sharp and Daniel Thomas. There wasn't at all beforehand, but the 23... Now, I think he could probably run this fuel tank a little further. He's been sat behind Daniel Thomas all race long. He's been able to lift and coast far more than the number 60 has, and the number 60's only just had to come down pit lane. So let's see what Kieran Sharp can do. He's still not quite coming towards the pit lane yet, just about to come up to the end of the straight, down towards the bomb hole just before he gets to Coram and Murray. Of course, he's got Brundle and Nelson to contend with before that, but Kieran Sharp, the ball really is in his court now. And the 23, who, won the race last week, hoping to do it again, but this time, maybe doing it on the strategy rather than on the racetrack.
Yeah, that was a very good point. I hadn't quite considered that earlier on. Maybe he was sat behind fuel saving for an hour and 10 minutes. Who knows how much fuel he could have saved there. We'll certainly find out. 19 minutes to go as we got a few of the GT3s come through. So that's Cheverton, Pike, and now Concoli. So just one more lap. So the 23, just one more lap than his rival coming in. So technically he'll have a slightly faster pit stop, and we have to see what he is going to do to try and beat Dan Thomas to the end.
Yeah, Dan Thomas, that's quite an aggressive way to get into your pit box there for Kieran Sharp, but what's this going to mean for the leading battle? Can he shorten off the pit stop just enough to get himself out ahead of Daniel Thomas and make the move in the pit lane rather than on the circuit? Let's see, the Aston Martin still stopped in his box. What can Daniel Thomas do? I mean, he can't really do anything apart from drive as fast as he can. I don't think it's going to be even close on the exit. Kieran Sharp's already accelerating. Daniel Thomas is not really anywhere to be seen. This could be a 3-second gap for Kieran Sharp. In fact, it is. And the 23 car, absolutely huge lead ahead of Daniel Thomas when they were pretty much locked together all race long.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out where the 3 seconds came from. Was it just that lap there, or is that a bit of fuel numbers? Because even if he had a little bit more fuel left in, I guess he could have then topped up even less fuel. Crazy stuff. But 3 seconds the gap. 3 seconds is the gap, and he's been able to do that with the strategy. He's sat behind his second place, biding his time, and he's waited for the pit stop to make his move.
And I'll tell you where it's come from. Kieran Sharp's stop time in the box was 18.9 seconds. Daniel Thomas, it was 22.7. That's where pretty much all of the time has come from. Kieran Sharp probably, like you say, just having to put a little less fuel into the car to get himself to the end of this race with only 17 minutes left to run. The 14, though, gets to the inside line, and Ethan Marone is ahead of Amy Grimm, up into P6 in the number 14 car, and just about makes his way through Nelson. A little bit cagey, though, as he comes into the bomb hole, but Looks like he's surviving just about with 70 minutes on the clock. Still, we've got leading battles to think about, though, because the GT3 rounds is by no means over, and the GT4 rounds could get a little bit closer than the 3 seconds it currently is.
Yeah, three class leaders are within 3 seconds of each other as well. GT3 AM and the 2 GT4 categories. This is some great battles there out on the track. And yeah, Dan Thomas, unfortunately, not doing it on the pit road, but on the track, are we going to be seeing a move up the inside? What a side-by-side move we're going to see here. The 14 on the outside, the 161 in the inside. Amy Grimm making the move down in towards now the Montreal hairpin, I should say. Can he make this stick? Yes, she can. And on the exit, they've got the move done.
Yeah, well done in the end. Good move from Amy Grimm. Inside lines, they went into Palmer. Oh, a little bit deep though through the corner. Oh, there's big contact. Both cars are just about going to keep it in a straight line. I don't quite know how Amy Grimm has not come off worse in that scenario, but Ethan Marone through once again. I think it's fair to say there was a little bit more than hefty contact making that move though.
Yes, that was a big risk, go side by side in towards Palmer's, and in the end the 14 has come out on top, but I don't think Amy's going to be too happy with that. That was a nice move in towards Montreal, but as we came up to the next corner, further contact was made. Like to see that one again. Just was there a squeeze there? That was a little bit too much, or was that just a racing incident with the two drivers pushing through a very fast and difficult corner?
Yeah, and with so little time left in this race comparatively to what we started with, I think it's fair to say that if they come to meet each other on the track once again, there's going to be some hefty fighting. Again, we'll see it. We've just seen it with Ethan Marone on board. I think it's going to be a better angle with the number 14 car. Oh, we're actually going to have a quick look at... Or maybe not. Ethan Marone, though, he did get through by hook or by crook, and he's ahead of Amy Grimm. We'll see it this time round. You guys lined it up for us beautifully. And I think this is going to be a bit of a good one through the corner, but the line's just going to close off.
Oh yeah, there just wasn't space up the inside. Okay, yeah, because from the outside shot, I was like, how did Amy come so far off the apex? But she didn't really, and there just was not a space up the inside. I mean, there was a tyre width at best, let alone a car width. And I would be surprised if the 14 there receives something for that one, because otherwise that was a nice move by Amy to get that done. And Ethan's actually come down pit road now. Is that for some damage maybe after that contact?
Very well be, which would be gutting right towards the end of a race like this. We've been going for in excess of 75 minutes now, and if you have any kind of damage, that's going to be absolutely gutting for you in terms of the points that you can get on the evening. Still battles ongoing though towards the front of some of the fields. This is Rachel Conkley on the back of the number 99 in the form of Andrew Pike. They've not got a big gap behind Sikorsky, Elia and Ettridge, though. You could see them all on the Bentley straight as we saw the camera angle from the outside of the bomb hole all the way down the former runway. Of course, as very rightly mentioned earlier, on this circuit built on the side of a former airfield, and such long straights here at Snetterton, meaning that there are such long periods to use the slipstream. It's almost just disappointing that there aren't heavier braking zones to make use of them, isn't it?
Yeah, the two longest straights have these fast corners. Obviously here at turn 1, and then Brundle at the end of the back straight. So definitely, a little bit more difficult in that regard. But then you have some bigger braking zones here at Montreal, up at Castini as well. And of course, just in general, with the way the track flows, you have pretty good overtaking opportunities at quite a few times. It's a difficult circuit, very easy to make a mistake and allow the driver behind to try and get through. And this is in the battle now. So it's the top 6 in GT3 Pro are ahead of all of the AM drivers. That was quite a bit different an hour ago, where it was all sort of jumbled up a little bit, but the pro drivers working their way to the front. And this is the battle for P5 and 6 as Pike and Concoli. They've only got 2.5 seconds to Cheverton up ahead as well. I think that's going to be too much to chase down, so it's just a focus on this battle for these drivers.
Yeah, and I think for these two, I don't think they'll necessarily mind fighting over these spots. It's not really looked like they've been able to keep tabs with particularly the front two of Watson and Ben Cooper. And Mike Barber's been able to just consolidate himself in P3 with Cheverton and Pike and Conkley all in their own little battle at the moment. Cheverton just a short waves ahead of Pike for the time being. Less than 3 seconds is that gap with just about those 12 minutes remaining in the race. But you know, these guys picking up some decent points for their championship once again. For Watson, after a win last week, will be picking up another win at this rate. Cooper, after a P2 last week, will be picking up another P2 this week. It would just be Mike Bobby getting himself onto the podium and Andrew Pike slipping off of it. Big changes in the GT3 AMs, we've covered that. But again, in the GT4 Pros and in the GT4 AMs, it feels like it's almost a lot of the same from last week, and we really are starting to see championship contenders emerge in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's always quite interesting if you see, you know, P1 and 2 being the exact same 2 races in a row, especially with all the, you know, variables that there can be, especially with a couple of classes being out there on the track, all of the chaos that there could be, especially in the opening few laps. But yeah, Sharp, Thomas, P1 and 2, Donington once again here at Snetterton, and also Bigembe and Coffin again 1 and 2, the same way around. So are they the championship contenders? We'll have to find out. Can they keep it going? You know, it's a Spa in a couple of weeks. It's certainly a lot different to the 2 tracks that we've started the season. And we say that, but Gembe's gone off. I think he was there off the track at Hamilton. Coffin's gone through, and the commentator's curse has struck again. But Gembe, we were saying just how he did so well to get in the lead. Let's see what he's done. He's gone up in towards Hamilton all by himself, loses that rear end, and that is race lead gone.
It's a good job Lewis McGlade doesn't he talk about the commentator's curve, but you're right, because Bigembe is oh my word, off the road and nearly came back into the path of, was that Amy Grimm coming through, or actually going to be
it was the 6th of Elliot.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, that's a slightly redder car. From that far away, it looked pink to me, but that's because my eyesight. Need new glasses, of course. But Elliot nearly getting, well, caught up in an incident that was not of his making whatsoever. As Bigembe went off the road. In fact, it was. Oh, and there was a little bit of contact as they made their way in towards Hamilton as well. Really tricky moments for those guys. But Joe Coffin, I mean, that's an absolute gift for him to be leading the race now.
Yeah, that is so funny. We thought it was going to be a more simple victory for Bigembe after he got his lead and he had the speed to hold off Coffin, but he's he's now lost 7 seconds, and unfortunately is not going to be able to get that back in the time that we saw. So let's see if Coffin is now going to make a mistake himself. Just showed you how much on the limit these drivers are. And Thomas Hamilton is actually a very, very tricky corner. It's a bit more of a kink than a corner, and it's really sort of one line. Got to take a lot of the apex and a lot of the curb and just try and roll the speed through. But it's a very dangerous and committed corner if you get it wrong.
You could say that for most of the corners around Snetterton, really, isn't it? Very difficult track to absolutely nail. This is the part of the circuit you don't want to be on. And, well, Rachel Conklin nearly coming to a complete standstill on the part of the circuit you don't really want to be stopped inside line as they make their way onto the Bentley straight at Williams. And that got a little bit tricky. But again, going through another GT4. You know, we've said it we really said it at the start of the race to think about for the initial lapping. There can be a lot of miscommunication, but clearly it can happen towards the end of the race as well.
Yeah, at least we know the brakes work very well on the Audi R8, because that car came to a stop very quickly and little to no contact being made. So that is really what you want. So here is the battle. This is second place in your GT3 AM. Elia and Ettridge in behind. They're too far behind Sikorsky now. 3 seconds in 8 minutes, probably not enough. But Ettridge has been there all day. He's been there, but not really challenged to get inside the top 2 places. Now is his opportunity. With some traffic up ahead, can always help.
Yeah, true. This is probably his chance now to get through on Elia. He's closed that gap back up once again. And how many chances does he need to have? He was sat behind Gianluca for so long in the early stages of the race. I'm sure Gianluca isn't pleased to see that yellow nose back on his rear wing once again. But Ettridge surely going to have to go for a move at some point over the remaining handful of laps that we now have in this race. There isn't going to be time to get many more done. You know, we're on lap 46. I think we may just about get to lap 50, but that'll pretty much be the cap. How many more chances is Ettridge going to even get, let alone how many does he need to make this move? Agostini this time around not going to work out for him in that 57 just yet, but he is starting to put the pressure on once again. As what's happened to Sikorsky? Where's Sikorsky gone? Is he off the road at Agostini?
Oh my word, 2 race leaders in the space of a couple of laps dropping down the way. And oh, he's come back. He's come back. It's a technical issue there on the side of Sikorsky. Can he stay in the game though before it kicks him out? That would be a big shame to lose the victory that way, but it looks like he's been reinstated at the front.
It does. Oh, and that is that's a sigh of relief for Franek Sikorsky. That well, not a sigh of relief for Elia and the 57 of course. Ettridge again. I didn't have a brain moment there, but Elia and Ettridge still fighting over P2. Sikorsky still fighting over the lead. I mean, particularly for the number 46 driver, after the difficulties he had last week. I mean, to lose a win in these circumstances would be absolutely gut-wrenching for him and would realistically cast him outside of championship potential after only 2 races in the season. So good to see him back towards the front of the field. Hopefully there's no more hard attacks towards the end of this race. But still, 6 minutes left to run. Chances are going to be there for these guys to swap positions, but all of a sudden the smallest leading gap is still in the GT3 AMs, but it's 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, they have just spread out a bit in the last sort of 5-10 laps or so. Since that pit stop, it really has changed things a little bit in these cars. Of course, at the front, Watson's still leading by 20 odd seconds. I mean, he's just so much faster. He's just on a 46.8. And I mean, that's a second faster than the next best car, but the closest car to him on the track, Ben Cooper, that was a 1.5 seconds quicker. So the pace really is there for Adam Watson out the front. And I think it's almost at a point where we can give him the championship just on raw speed, but he has to go out there and execute side by side up towards Hamilton. We know what can happen in this corner. Big send up the inside for the AM lead, and in second place I should say, and Ettridge gets it stuck there, but can he keep it at the next apex? He can, and the 6 has to back out of that one. What a move there by Ettridge, really taking the risk of 5 minutes to go.
And all of a sudden, with that number 600 almost in the way a touch, Oliver Ettridge could gain a little bit of a march here on Elia as they run their way through the corner. It's actually James Smaggers-Gale who is slightly in the way for Elia. Oh, there's a car from the background. Who is that? Oh, is that the 42? I'm not too sure who that was. For a moment, I thought it was one of the leading 2 GT4 Pro drivers, but it's not Daniel Thomas. It's Ryan Moles. He is in the GT4 Pros, and he has lost a position to Christian Menes, but it could have been a little bit worse for him in the 18. Let's see what's happened to him. Is it a drop off the rear end? Yes, it is. Goes very early into the corner.
Yeah, that's a weird one. I mean, we saw Biembe also losing the rear end on the GT4. Oh, that was that was a terrible reverse across the track, centimetres from hitting another car, but I think we all ended up okay. Yeah, so not ideal from Moles in that 18 car, but it seems like they were all okay in the end.
I think Christian Menes there, he was the driver that narrowly missed, probably had a code brown there, because you don't really expect to see a car reversing across the circuit, across the racing line. Luckily enough, there wasn't an airplane crash, which they absolutely could have done. No pun intended, of course, with that straight being a former runway. But here we are, so it works anyway. 4 minutes to go in this race, and still a little bit of almost a couple of question marks over some of the leading battles. Daniel Thomas is really gaining up to the back of Kieran Sharp at the moment. GT4 Pro Class. Ethan Marone isn't finding good position. That was the number 4 coming through in the end of Mike Barber, P3 overall for the time being. Still, Conkley trying to get through on Pike for P5 in this race, and opportunities becoming a lot thinner now. You're thinking about maybe 5 or 6 more overtaking spots before the race is probably going to be run.
Yes, and it's never an easy one around here as well. So even if you get side by side, to complete the move is going to be quite something else. So maybe the 51 can try it, but we'll have to find out. Of course, almost making some contact a little bit earlier in some traffic, so they know the racer can get close. But let's see if they can make the move. Under 3 minutes to go. Couple of laps remaining in this race. It's 1:47-ish a lap. So yeah, 2 laps to go it will be. Unless Adam Watson's so far ahead that he might just sneak an extra lap.
Yeah, could be what we're looking at here with Adam Watson about halfway around the lap right now. I don't think he'll be able to get to the line in time to shorten this, to extend this race an extra lap. I think we will get around 50 in the end here, but either way, it's going to be Only about 3 minutes to go for most of these drivers before they will say goodbye to Snetterton and start thinking about Spa in a couple of weeks' time. You know, that week break is going to give drivers that little bit more of a chance to practice, Cam. And Spa, a circuit where, you know, qualifying's not going to be as important, but I definitely think drivers can convert a little bit of their race pace from Snetterton and their confidence as well over to the Belgian circuit.
Absolutely. I think the extra week, the most importance with that is to learn the strategy and what they can do there. See what they can do with the fuel number as well, with the extra drafting that they'll have at that track. Oh no, that is a huge spin across the track. I think that was that Ryan Moles? Maybe he was going down the way. Someone's had a big off. Sikorsky as well is going down the way. Has he had some more connection issues? I know he's really just jumped to the top, so loads of things happening there. But oh my word, I think that actually might have been a Maroon then, the 14. Oh my god. Oh, so that's how the contact was made. So Sikorsky made contact with, it was actually Matty Wild. Across the tracks he goes, almost taking out the 51.
Yeah, Wild coming over Sikorsky a little bit. Sikorsky, of course, in the faster class, probably didn't expect Wild to come across, and Wild probably didn't expect Sikorsky on the outside line. Luckily, it doesn't look like it's affected, Sikorsky too much. Wild, of course, a little bit further down in the GT4M class anyway, but we are about to get to the white flag lap here because Adam Watson is about halfway around. He won't be starting another lap in this race. This is going to be the final lap here at Snetterton. Aiden Carter's got one more lap to try and get through on James King. That gap only down to 0.5 of a second. Moves definitely on here.
Absolutely. It's been a very crazy race in terms of some of these crashes that we have seen. Watson is actually already about halfway around this lap, coming towards the end, so let's see how close that's going to be to another lap or not. But I think it should be final lap time for him, and still a few more opportunities for these drivers. A couple more corners. Can they try and find a way through? Are they willing to do a big send to try and get that next position?
Yeah, and as these guys run their way in towards Agostini, around towards the final corner will be coming Adam Watson. Time hit 0. He's not going to be able to extend this race by an extra lap. But after, a really dominant victory 7 days ago, Adam Watson looks like he's going to rinse and repeat this time once again in the GT3 Pro class. Aiden Carter still trying to get through on James King, but at the front of the field, it is Adam Watson. 2 wins from 2 at the start of the season. Exactly what he needs in the GT3 Pro class to put himself really into championship contention. It looks like it's going to be Sikorsky, Sharp and Coffin to come across the line as winners as well, but some of them are still a little ways away from making it their own. Sikorsky coming in towards the final couple of corners now, comes through the Bommel in towards Coram and into Murray's as well. It's been a really good race for the 46, picked his moments, made his moves work when it mattered, and as he comes out of the final corner, the connection issues, it seems, haven't put him off too much. And Sikorsky, after disappointment last time out in the East Midlands, is going to win here at East Anglia, and in his Ferrari he's going to be delighted in the GT3 AM class. Really well done for him. Just in front, Kieran Sharp wins in the GT4 Pro class. He's going to be delighted to make it 2 wins from 2 as well. And in the GT4 AMs, with Joe Coffin coming towards the final couple of corners now, looks like he's going to be our 4th and final winner of the day, Cam.
And it was all changed there at times. Of course, Coffin led the way for so long, lost the lead around the pit stops to Begembe, but then Begembe making a big mistake and dropping back 8 seconds, and that is enough, and all it took for Coffin to retake the lead, and he is going to regain those points that he lost. So they were 1-2 in Donington, and now they are 2-1, so they are matched first to second, second to first, and it's going to be a great championship fight between those two drivers, I'm sure.
Yeah, teed up absolutely beautifully after the opening 2 installments of what has really turned out to be the start of an absolutely thrilling season here in the Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge in 2025. A really great way to spend 90 minutes here at Snetterton. In the end, though, winning in the GT3 Pro class was Adam Watson once again, showing his class as he did 7 days ago. He won by nearly half a minute ahead of Ben Cooper. Mike Barber was another 9 seconds back or so from Cooper, but picks up his first podium of the season. Matt Cheverton, Ashley Pike and Rachel Conkley, a bit of a group of cars, 4th, 5th and 6th. James King pushed all the way by Aiden Carter, finishes 7th and 8th in the final car. Pedro Silva comes across that line to finish in 9th in class. Over in the GT3 AMs, similarly, after 50 laps of the race, it was Franek Sikorsky who managed to find himself to the top of the tree. He wins after the disappointment he had last week. Ettridge, P3 last week, P2 this week. Could very well be championship leader going to Spa in a couple of weeks' time, with Gianluca Elliott picking up his first podium of the season in third. Ben Bentleyworth and Ricky Pitman were the only other two drivers on the lead lap, with quite a few having some difficult days. Louis Hesketh, Nick Scott Dickerson and Nathan Anstis, who won race 1, only down in P8. Andy Schell and Zed Murray a couple of laps down. Difficult nights for them, with Chris Humphreys, John Earl and Nguyen just down there in P13, not having good days. I think all three of them not getting through the opening half an hour in that race, even a disappointment for them. In the GT4s, bit of a similar story again in the pro standings, with Kieran Sharp winning his second of the season. Daniel Thomas finished second for the second time this season. Jack Jeffries, though, getting his first podium of 2025 in the Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge. He'll be delighted, I'm sure. He was ahead of Christian Mennies, who avoided the spinning Ryan Moles towards the end. He finished 5th. Brandon Loden and, of course, Richard Simner, who crashed very early on, 6th and 7th come the end. And finally, in the GT4 AM class, it was Joe Coffin who won out eventually. P2 last week, as Cam mentioned, P1 this week, as is the reverse for Joshua Magembe, who was the only other driver officially on the lead lap. A lot of the rest of the guys were closer, but of course they were lapped that extra time by Watson, the overall race leader. David Brown on the podium for the first time this season. Luca Monroe and Carl Chase. Amy Grimm, Ethan Marone and Matt Wild inside the top 8, with Craig Hewlett and James Snackers-Gale inside the top 10. A couple more cars to run through. Georgie Mackey, Ashley Toft and Ben Holmes were 1 and 2 laps down respectively. Dylan Mystery just 4 laps down, but still relatively competitive in that race. Well, quite some race, and I think it's fair to say we are going to be keen to get some words from some of our drivers, and we can first talk to our overall race winner in the GT3 Pros. It was Adam Watson, and I think, sorry Adam, I've dragged you in mid-sentence. Congratulations again, though. Dominant victory from you. 2 wins from 2. It looks like it's going really well for you at the moment.
Yeah, it's going pretty good. Just trying to do the best I can, put laps in. I'm not a fan of Snetterton. I wish it was never made, but you know, it's the worst track in the UK, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll see what we can do at the next one.
If I wasn't so close to Snetterton, I'd probably be happy with the Snetterton Sana, but I'm not going to take it tonight. Thinking about Spa, though, in a couple of weeks' time, is that a circuit you're more looking forward to?
Yeah, more than this track, yes. I think I'd rather race on the north side than this place. But yeah, Spa would be good. I'm not sure whether it'll suit the Porsche. But we'll just do what we can do. And we'll do what we've been doing every race, work a strategy, and then use that strategy to see what we can bring a result out of.
Yeah, well, we look forward to it, Adam. Congratulations again, and good luck for Spa in just a couple of weeks' time.
Cheers, thank you.
And Watson then, GT3 Pro race winner. Looking up and down of who else we've got, I noticed that we've not got any other of the GT3 Pro podium sitters, at least for the time being, so we're going to jump straight onto our GT4 AM winner in the form of Franek Sikorsky. Franek, welcome in this evening. Disappointment last week somewhat, of course, off of the start, but a really good race for you tonight. Where did the pace come from?
To be honest, I'm not pretty sure. I think like that I could have been P4 overall, but still I'm very, very happy with the win in the AM class. Yeah, the last week race was pretty disappointing, but yeah, some points made up today, and really, really happy about the result.
Yeah, but again, puts you right into championship contention. Spa in 2 weeks, is that a circuit you're looking forward to?
Definitely. I think that the whole grid will be pretty strong there. A lot of drivers know that track pretty well. So do I, and I think that we'll see some pretty cool action on track.
Yeah, we very much hope so, and hope to see you up there as well, Franek. Congratulations, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much.
Sikorsky there, race winner in the GT3 AMs. Again, I don't believe there's any other GT3 AM drivers in, so we're going to jump straight to our GT4 Pro winner. And in the end, that was Kieran Sharp, who was right up towards the sharp end in the end. Very sorry, Kieran. Welcome in, Kieran. I hope you can hear us. How was that race for you? 2 wins from 2 on the season. Looks like it's going as smoothly as it could for you so far.
Yeah, I mean, it looks that way, but it feels like a swing anyway with the traffic in this series. I did my best to stick with him throughout the whole first part, and I was just saving fuel as much as possible I could, and it paid off at the end.
But a fantastic pit strategy worked out incredibly well for you. Where do you feel like this leaves you in terms of your confidence going into Spa in a couple of weeks?
It's a track I'm sometimes really good at, or I absolutely throw at. So I think I'm confident I can probably be within the top 3 in most rounds, whether I can beat Daniel in each one, which I think is what I need to do really throughout the championship. And I think he's a lot more quicker on one lap than me, and he can normally start ahead of me. So it's always more about trying to think I'm going to overtake him in each race.
You're doing a good job at the start of the championship. That's all that really matters, Kieran. Congratulations again on the win, and we hope to speak to you in a couple of weeks' time after the Spa race.
Thanks, see you there.
Kieran Sharp, then our third of the winners this evening. And just like the 2 GT3 classes, he was the only driver in the interview booth from the GT4 Pro class. We've got all 3 GT4 AM drivers, though, waiting for us. And the first one of them was Joe Coffin, who ended up winning the race in the AM class. P2 for you last week, Joe. P1 this week. Really sets you up well for the championship, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was tough last week. I had all the pace, but got spun by a GT and then decided to go full pace into Old Hairpin on cold tyres, which was a bit silly. Today, I just tried to settle in until the G3 decided to wreak havoc at the hairpin. So then that's why I felt so far behind Joshua. But then chased him down, and man, it was one hell of a. I was driving angry. I was driving so angry.
But how's the confidence going into the final few rounds? Because you're, of course, tied on points going into those races. Where do you feel like you can get to? Do you feel confident winning the title?
I think it's going to be a really tough tie with Joshua. He does a lot of practice, from what he's just said to me in the waiting room, and he's got a lot of talent, especially for a guy as young as he is. So I think he's gonna run it right to the end. I've got a pedal upgrade next week. I've got some SimMagic pedals coming in, so hopefully that brings a little bit more pace out.
Yeah, we'll have to see, though. But well done, Joe, once again. The first win of the season for you, and we'll hopefully speak to you in a couple of weeks' time.
Cheers, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Coffin there, winner in the GT4 AM class. He was just ahead in the end of Joshua Bugembe. Win last week for you, Joshua. P2 this week. I think you'll be disappointed with how the race ended, but good points for your championship.
Yeah, it's good points. Pretty disappointed how the race ended, but still good points. I think the Mercedes was a bit quicker around here, so still happy to come away with a P2.
And looking forward to Spa in a couple of weeks. Is that a circuit you favour? Are you looking forward to that race?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it will be quite good, as this track was quite a lot tight, so it's hard for the GT3s to overtake and makes everything a bit closer. But I think Spa will be good. A lot of more overtaking opportunities.
Yeah, and we really do look forward to that. And with you going into that tied for the championship lead, we definitely up here in the broadcast booth are looking forward to that battle towards the end of the season. But well done, Joshua, again. Podium in the end. And we'll speak to you hopefully in a couple of weeks' time.
Yes, thank you.
Joshua Bugembe there, P2 for him. He was just ahead of P3 man David Brown, and David joins us now. David, welcome in. Congratulations on the podium finish. A little bit behind the top 2, but in the end, very good points for your championship. Where does this leave you in terms of the confidence from the first few races and going into the back end of the season?
Yeah, it leaves us in a pretty good position for Spa, and definitely boosted the confidence since Donington, where I didn't seem to struggle, but I just had too many mistakes.
Again, Spa in a couple of weeks. Do you feel like you can try and narrow down on those mistakes at the Belgian circuit?
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, Spa's a pretty good track for me. We've got the Global Endurance Championship this weekend, so I can sort of dial it in a bit. Be a good race, hopefully.
We look forward to it. David, congratulations again. P3 for you at Snetterton. We'll speak to you maybe in a couple of weeks' time.
Hopefully. Thank you very much.
P3, man, nearly dragged myself out of the call. That wouldn't have been a good idea, would it? And whilst David and the rest of the guys have jumped in, a couple of others have popped into the booth. We will get a quick word with P3 driver from the GT3 Pros, Mike Barber, who joins us now. Mike, welcome in. Congrats on the podium. Really good way to get yourself into this championship now. Where do you feel like it leaves you going into Spa in a couple of weeks?
Perfect, to be honest. After the disappointment I had at Donington, this is just what I needed to get back into. Hopefully get a top 5 finish now. That's the aim now, after the 9th place finish at Donny.
How much confidence can you build off of this result, of course, going into the final 3 rounds? Because, you put yourself in a great position.
Absolutely loads. It's just what I needed mentally. It was such a disappointment at Donington. And then to come here and finally get a podium, it's given me massive amounts of confidence now.
Well, that's what we love to hear, Mike. And congratulations again on the podium. We hope that, we wish you all the best at Spa in a couple of weeks' time, and hopefully we get to speak to you then as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Here's Mike Barber there, P3 in the end in the GT3 Pros, and one more driver we've got in the form of Oliver Ettridge. He finished 2nd in the GT3 AMS, just behind Franek Sikorski. Oliver, welcome in. A really hard-fought race for you tonight. Tell us how it went from your perspective, because it looked like a really tricky one.
Yeah, it was quite tricky. I don't think this... I mean, I love Snetterton, but it doesn't lend itself well to overtaking, in my opinion. So the first 2/3 of the race, I was just fuel saving as much as I could every lap, hoping to extend on the strategy a bit, maybe have a bit of a shorter pit stop. A couple of incidents put me sort of 10 or so seconds back from Luca Elia. And then, yeah, last 30 minutes of the race was just a sprint, try and catch up and see what I could do.
I mean, it's a great result for you. This track maybe not lending itself to overtaking. Spa will in a couple of weeks. You are definitely going to be 2nd in the championship, if not leading the championship going into that. What are your aspirations for Spa?
Well, certainly aspiring for the win. I think I'd hold your horses on that. I might be picking up a penalty or 2 from this race, so I might drop down to P3 in the championship. But yeah, really important to get a good result at Spa, because I'm missing Silverstone, so need to maximise points where I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you are 3rd in the championship, still competitive, and that's what we love to see. Oliver, thanks for joining us. Congratulations again, and hope to speak to you in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you very much.
Oliver Ettridge then, P2 in the GT3 AMS, and that pretty much wraps us up in terms of interviews, Cam. I mean, a really interesting race for championship pictures. Of course, some winners from last week winning again, but some championships closing up as well. Really tees us up perfectly as we go into a 1-week break.
Absolutely, that's just exactly what the second round of a championship is supposed to be, and yeah, we're really teed up nicely for the final 3 races. Couple of weeks gap now to Spa, so we break, drivers can get some rest, then get some practice, and hopefully Spa is very much an entertaining race, I'm sure. The slipstream as well, I'm really looking forward to that, both for the racing and the strategy wise.
Yeah, cannot wait for that. 2 weeks' time, you'll find it. Same time, same place here on RaceSpotTV for the Motorsports UK Esports GT Challenge on iRacing. It'll be round 3 at Spa in a couple of weeks' time. Myself, Gareth Acker, have been alongside Cameron Roger in the commentary box, and Hugo Luis behind the cameras, making the broadcast look wonderful for us tonight. We thank you for watching what has been an enthralling race, and we hope that you've enjoyed what you've seen, and you'll come back in a couple of weeks, because Spa promises to be yet another thrilling instalment of this fantastic challenge.